Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. I can still taste the adrenaline in my mouth whenever I remember that evening, an ordinary Wednesday night turning into a slow-motion car crash that upended everything I thought I knew. The sky was a deep charcoal. Clouds snaked over the full moon, cutting off what little light remained. In the driveway of our suburban home, I stood motionless beside my SUV, listening for any sign of my wife inside. Valerie's car was parked at an odd angle, headlights still on, slicing through the dark like search beams. Usually she'd be inside cooking or catching up on the latest business podcast, but the house itself was eerily silent. Something felt off from the moment I stepped onto the porch. Maybe the prickling sense that a storm was brewing, or maybe it was the dread that had been gnawing at me for weeks. When I turned the key in the lock, the door creaked open like I was entering forbidden territory. The lights were on in the living room, illuminating a stray high-heeled shoe lying upside down near the sofa. Another pump lay halfway to the kitchen, as if tossed aside in haste. My pulse thumped in my temples. "Valerie!" I called out. No response. The hush was so loud I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. The air carried a faint scent of vanilla from her usual candle, but also something sharper like tension itself had a smell. Suddenly, a muffled thump came from upstairs and I felt a jolt of alarm. My military training kicked in. I stepped quietly over the shoes, edging toward the staircase. Each step seemed to echo, my caution sharpened by a dozen memories I'd rather forget. At the top of the stairs, the bedroom door stood ajar. A sliver of light streaked across the hallway. Goosebumps rose along my arms. My mind churned with worst-case scenarios. An intruder, a crisis, or something else entirely. I gripped the doorknob. Why do I feel like I'm invading my own home? Inside, I found Valerie kneeling on the carpet, rummaging through a travel bag. Her hair was disheveled, eyes wild with frustration. She sprang upright when she realized I was there, an almost guilty expression flickering across her face before she pasted on a tired smile. "Adrian," she breathed out, clutching a black dress she'd hastily crammed into the bag. "You startled me." My gaze darted across the room. The disorganized closet, clothes yanked from hangers, her laptop open on the bed, a half-finished text message glowing on the screen. She looked like she'd been caught in some frenzied plan, but to do what? Late night? I tried to keep my voice steady, though my heart hammered. She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Client emergency. I'm flying out tomorrow for a conference." "Conference? You never mentioned that before." My words cut through the silence, suspicion creeping in. Valerie half laughed, tension creeping into the sound. "Must have slipped my mind. I'm sorry. It came up on short notice." Outside, thunder rumbled. It felt like nature was reading the mood inside these walls. The overhead light buzzed, flickering a moment before steadying. Beneath that hum, Valerie hastily zipped her bag shut. "I'll handle it," she said, voice clipped. "Don't worry." I tried to push down the knot in my stomach, the instinct that something was seriously wrong. "I wasn't worried about the trip itself," I said softly, stepping closer. "I'm worried about us." Her lips parted, eyes glistening, but she quickly blinked away any sign of emotion. "Nothing's wrong, Adrian," she said, but the tone was unconvincing. She turned off the laptop screen as though shielding it from me. I recalled the final weeks of my first marriage, those silent nights of tension and evasion, so I recognized the warning signs. I felt that same dread now, a sense of history threatening to repeat itself. This time I vowed not to be blindsided. "Okay," I murmured, forcing calm. "Let's talk tomorrow." She nodded stiffly. "Sure, tomorrow." I wanted to believe her. Yet as I left the room, I caught sight of her phone perched precariously on the nightstand. An unfamiliar name glowed in a text notification and my gut twisted. She noticed my glance and snatched the phone away, face guarded. My mind churned with unasked questions. Why is she so secretive? Why does everything feel on edge? Downstairs, the living room was exactly as I left it, shoes strewn on the floor, the sour tension lingering. I flicked off the headlights on Valerie's car and locked up, hearing the low drum of the thunder intensify. There was no physical intruder in our home, but the sense of invasion remained. At midnight, I lay awake on the couch, glancing at the staircase. Rain spattered against the windows as if testing their resilience. Valerie never came down. Her silence pressed in from above like a weight on my chest. I stared at the ceiling, overwhelmed by a sharp sense of foreboding. Something was unraveling between us, and the only question was whether I could stop it in time or if it was already too late. The next morning dawned gray and hushed, as if the storm had drained all color from the sky. My commute to the Crestwood Technical Documentation Office took me past rows of drenched maple trees, their leaves plastered against slick asphalt. I tried to shake off the uneasy aftertaste of last night Valerie's cryptic packing, the hidden messages focusing instead on the start of another workday. Walking into the glass-paneled lobby, I nodded to the security guard, Paul, who gave a polite greeting in return. His expression hinted that the office rumor mill was alive as always. I stepped into the elevator alongside two co-workers whispering about budget concerns and possible layoffs. Their voices carried a sense of dread that made my pulse quicken. On the fourth floor, the open plan area buzzed under fluorescent lights. At my desk, I found a pastel note reading, "Cedric wants a status report ASAP." Great. Cedric Vaughn, my immediate boss, was the type who'd fill your inbox with frantic emails at 3 a.m., then blame you for not responding faster. Lately, he'd been more overbearing than ever, scheduling pop-up meetings that felt more like fishing expeditions to catch employees off guard. Before I could even sit, I heard a soft but firm voice. "Adrian, got a second?" I turned to see Helen Jordan approaching from the corridor. Petite yet poised, Helen was easily the sharpest project coordinator on our team. She had a knack for smoothing out Cedric's chaotic demands into something workable. "Sure," I said, trying to appear calm. "You look determined." Helen smiled wryly. "That's one way to put it. Cedric's on a tear about last week's editorial backlog. I told him you were finalizing the charts, but he's anxious. Mind if I see what we've got so far?" I gestured for her to follow me to my desk, flipping open my laptop to show the revised documentation charts. "I've cross-referenced all the service manuals with the new compliance rules. That's the backlog he's concerned about." She studied the screen, tucking a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Looks good. Once I confirm the data with the editorial team, Cedric can stop breathing down everyone's neck." Her tone carried a hint of exasperation. I admired Helen's efficiency. While Cedric thrived on tension, Helen soothed it. "Thanks," I said, trying to muster a genuine smile. "You're saving me from yet another meltdown." She chuckled. "I do my best." Before she left, her eyes flicked to me, curiosity apparent. "Long night? You seem a bit off." A wave of unease rolled through me. For a split second, I considered confiding in her about Valerie's erratic behavior, but I didn't. It was too personal. "Just lack of sleep," I muttered. Helen gave a sympathetic nod. "If you need anything, you know where to find me." I waited until she strolled away, then shuffled papers to occupy my hands. My mind drifted from Cedric's demands to the image of Valerie kneeling on our bedroom floor, but the day refused to grant me quiet reflection. Within minutes, Cedric swept through the aisle. He wore a crisp blue suit that screamed middle management, and his expression was a mixture of impatience and feigned joviality. "Adrian!" he boomed, forcing a bright grin. "Hope you're ready to discuss last week's metrics. The powers that be want them on my desk by noon." I inhaled slowly. "Already ahead of schedule. Helen's double-checking the editorial corrections. You'll have it in time." Cedric blinked, momentarily stumped by my efficiency, then cleared his throat. "Great. Gregory Clifton, our senior executive, wants an update too. He's pushing for a more streamlined approach." "Streamlined, huh?" That typically meant someone higher up believed we were costing too much. The rumor about budget cuts echoed in my mind. "I'll be prepared." Cedric offered a condescending pat on my shoulder. "Good man. Let's keep the machine well-oiled, shall we?" As he strutted off, I fought the urge to roll my eyes. "Keep the machine well-oiled," I repeated in my head. Sure, as if anxiety and micromanagement were the best lubricants. My phone buzzed. A text from Valerie. Conference postponed. I'll be home late. Don't wait up. I closed my eyes, exhaling. Another abrupt change. Another flimsy explanation. Our relationship was sliding into a realm where texts replaced honest conversation, where one-liners passed for marital communication. That sense of approaching crisis felt more tangible by the second. Pushing aside personal turmoil, I dove into the workload. Meetings, documents, and last-minute edits consumed me until lunchtime. Even then, I only allowed myself a quick bite at my desk, a half-eaten sandwich, a cold cup of coffee. Cedric popped by again to remind me of the deliverables, an overused corporate term that made my skin crawl. By late afternoon, Helen emailed me the final confirmations. I compiled them into a single polished report. Despite my internal worry, I managed to stay on top of every detail. If something was threatening to break apart at home, I intended to keep my professional life steady. When 5 o'clock finally rolled around, I shut down my computer and walked out under the flickering hallway light. The entire day had felt like treading water in a turbulent sea, with Cedric's storms on one horizon and Valerie's secrecy on the other. As I headed to the parking lot, I told myself that tomorrow might bring clarity. But a part of me already knew the illusions we maintained were growing brittle. A single shock might be enough to shatter them completely. Back home that evening, the sky was clearer, the storm's aftermath leaving a crisp coolness in the air. Valerie's car wasn't in the driveway. Usually I'd feel relief to have the house to myself, time to decompress from the corporate frenzy. Instead, the emptiness fed my anxiety. I set my briefcase down in the foyer and flicked on the living room lamp. The soft glow revealed a tidy space that felt unnervingly hollow. A plate and half-empty glass on the coffee table suggested Valerie had been here, then bolted off again. The hush was oppressive, like a silent question. Where are we heading? Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through our recent texts. She'd said the conference was postponed, yet she wasn't home. No mention of a new event, no friendly dinners in the fridge, just silence. Sinking onto the couch, I stared at the photo on the mantelpiece, Valerie and I, smiling on a sunny beach 6 months ago. We looked carefree, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath our feet. I swiped open a small notepad app, something I used rarely. Tonight felt different, like I needed to document each unexplained late return, every odd phone call. I titled it, Valerie's Schedule Discrepancies. A bleak name, but my gut told me the truth lay in the details. Date, Tuesday. Claimed urgent meeting. Arrived home after 11 p.m. Wednesday. Rushed packing for a canceled conference. Thursday. MIA. No new explanation. Midway through typing, a creak sounded from the kitchen. My heart jolted until I realized it was just the old fridge settling. Exhaling shakily, I decided it was time to rummage up dinner. The fridge offered little beyond leftover takeout and a sad cluster of grapes. I microwaved the takeout, some lukewarm pad thai, and forced down a few bites, my appetite dulled by swirling questions. When the clock struck 9, I couldn't take the quiet anymore. I texted Valerie. Everything okay? I'm home if you want to talk. 10 minutes passed with no response. Finally, a text flashed back. I'm fine, busy, don't wait up. That was it. I shut my eyes, frustration coiling inside. She was busy almost every night now. Busy with what or whom? The word divorce flickered like a neon sign in my mind, but I shoved it aside. If we were truly drifting apart, I needed to know for sure rather than lurk in painful half-ignorance. My phone buzzed again, but it was only a work email from Cedric, ironically titled Daily Check-in. Perfect. More micromanagement. A line from the email read, "We must remain vigilant about departmental performance." As if he could sense my personal meltdown, he hammered me professionally. I set the phone aside, letting the tension simmer, and turned on the TV for background noise. A detective show played people unearthing secrets to find a missing person. It struck me how I felt like one of those people, chasing any lead to figure out Valerie's life. My gaze slid back to the mantel. The photograph stared at me, mocking how swiftly a picture-perfect moment could become a facade. Half an hour later, I heard the front door. Valerie stepped in, dropping her keys onto the side table with a metallic clink. She looked startled to see me perched on the couch. "Still awake?" she asked, pushing a stray lock of hair from her face. I muted the TV. Wanted to check in with you. Valerie forced a smile, walking around to the far side of the couch, maintaining a physical distance I couldn't help but notice. I'm beat, she said, avoiding eye contact. Long day. Where were you? I asked, keeping my tone gentle. She gave an evasive shrug. Just out, work dinner. You know how it goes. Then she spotted my phone lying next to the half-eaten pad thai. A flicker of unease crossed her eyes as if she worried I'd discovered something. I'm heading to bed, she blurted, sidestepping further questions. I sighed, wishing I could unravel the tension. All right, good night. She paused at the edge of the hallway, turning halfway. Her features softened for a second, as though she might say something genuine, an apology, a confession. But the moment passed. She disappeared around the corner, leaving a faint echo of footsteps on the stairs. I stared after her, that silent notepad app a stone in my pocket. Subtle distances that phrase floated into my mind. It perfectly described the invisible gulf expanding between us. The lonely dinner, her cryptic replies, the nights she vanished. We shared the same roof but lived in different worlds. Unable to shake my unease, I rose and switched off the TV. Dishes from her hurried meal still sat on the counter, a quiet testament to the life we used to share. At that moment, I decided I couldn't keep ignoring the signs. I would track the details, collect them like puzzle pieces. If Valerie was hiding someone, I needed the truth. I tossed the half-eaten pad thai into the trash and headed upstairs. The house felt colder, as if the creeping distance between us had robbed it of warmth. Valerie's bedroom door was closed, ours technically, but nowadays it felt like hers. The handle didn't turn when I tested it gently. Locked. Back in the guest room, I eased the door shut and sat down on the edge of the bed, the faint hum of our home's heating system filling the silence. My reflection in the mirror across from me looked tired, older than my years. This marriage, once a refuge, now felt like a labyrinth of locked doors and short answers, subtle distances, and part of me feared they might soon become insurmountable walls. Friday brought a deceptive sense of routine. At Crestwood Tech Docks, the keyboards clacked in a steady rhythm while overhead lights buzzed softly. But conversations around the water cooler turned darker, rippling with chatter about departmental restructuring. People shared rumors in hushed voices, eyes darting nervously. That tension nestled around me like a tight collar. Helen approached me before lunch, crisp documents in hand. These are the final numbers on last quarter's updates, she announced, her voice hushed. Cedric wants them for his meeting with Gregory Clifton. I eyed the spreadsheets. He's meeting Gregory directly? Usually Cedric delivered data through group presentations. None's implied something bigger, possibly gloomier. Helen nodded, concern edging her tone. Word is, upper management might be trimming the budget. They're looking at staff performance reports. A prickle of alarm spread across my shoulders. So layoffs might be on the table? She shrugged, glancing around as if the walls had ears. It's possible. Cedric's not subtle about wanting to cut corners, especially if it scores him points with corporate. She hesitated. Look, Adrian, I know you have a good track record, but I just sense he's singling you out lately. I forced a small smile. Thanks for the heads up. I'll keep my eyes open. Inside, anxiety coiled. My personal life was messy enough. Losing my job on top of that sounded like stepping into a sinkhole. Helen's expression softened. If you need help presenting your achievements to Gregory, let me know. She gave a supportive nod and slipped away. After she left, Cedric beckoned me to his office, a corner room with large windows looking down on the parking lot. The vantage point made him appear like a sentinel or a self-appointed king surveying his domain. Adrian, come in, he said almost too casually. He wore a tight-lipped grin that put me on guard immediately. I closed the door behind me. You wanted to see me? Cedric leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. Rumors are flying about budget cuts, he began, voice oily. I want you to rest assured that if there are any staff adjustments, we'll handle them efficiently. The bluntness made my pulse jump. Good to know. Anything specific I should be aware of? He flipped open a folder. Your performance is acceptable, though I'd prefer it to be more proactive. If I can't show Gregory a strong case for your output, he might see you as expendable. This department must prove itself indispensable. His words conjured the image of a guillotine blade dangling overhead. Understood, I said, carefully measured. I've been on time with every project, and my revisions have boosted accuracy by 15%. Cedric waved a dismissive hand. Yes, it's all in the metrics. But we need synergy, not just numbers. I suggest you demonstrate your willingness to adapt. Maybe volunteer for weekend shifts or propose a new cost-saving idea. He gave me a calculated smirk, as though enjoying the role of puppet master. I swallowed the sting of pride. I'll see what I can come up with. He checked his watch. Meeting starts soon. I'll be sure to highlight your skills, assuming you're on board with total dedication. The subtext was clear. Comply or face trouble. With a curt nod, I stepped out. My stomach churned, mind drifting to the small notepad of Valerie's suspicious activities. Did I also need a private log of Cedric's manipulations? Everything in my life was turning into a ledger of potential betrayals. Around noon, people scattered for lunch, but I stayed glued to my desk, drafting efficiency proposals. Stress hammered at my temples. My phone buzzed a message from Valerie, ironically timed. Have dinner with me tonight? Need to talk. My heart skipped. Need to talk could mean anything. Maybe this was the moment we'd lay our cards on the table. I typed back a simple, okay, what time? She didn't reply immediately. A swirl of dread and hope knotted in my chest. If she wanted a genuine conversation, perhaps we could salvage our relationship. Or maybe she'd deliver another blow, continuing to unravel my sense of stability. I finished my so-called proposals and emailed them to Cedric, adding Helen as a courtesy copy. Before I could even breathe, Helen appeared. Gregory's back from the meeting. He wants a quick word. Great. From one higher-up to another. My nerves prickled again. Sure, I said, standing. I followed Helen down the corridor to Gregory Clifton's office, larger than Cedric's, with tasteful furnishings and a calm presence. Gregory was known to be fair-minded, but also decisive. He greeted me with a firm handshake. Adrian, thanks for stopping by. I've been reviewing departmental data. Cedric. He's got big ideas, but sometimes he lacks the clarity I need. I wanted your perspective on how the team's doing day to day. I felt a cautious relief. We're efficient, though morale's shaky with these rumored budget cuts. The editorial backlog is nearly caught up thanks to Helen's coordination. I decided not to sugarcoat. We could use better resource allocation or a more stable workflow. Gregory nodded thoughtfully. Appreciate your honesty. Cedric's pushing for cost reductions, but I value continuity. Keep doing solid work, and let me know if you hit snags. He gave a final reassuring nod, then turned to his phone, signaling the meeting's end. Outside his office, Helen smiled faintly. That sounded promising. I exhaled, tension easing slightly. It's nice to speak with someone who doesn't just spout buzzwords. Agreed, she said, handing me a folder. I'll see you at Monday's briefing? Definitely. We parted ways, and I headed home early to prepare for dinner with Valerie, mind whirling like a cyclone. The atmosphere in both my personal life and my job felt like a pressure cooker set to explode. Each moment seemed to carry the echo of a dark overture, warning me that the next act could rip everything apart. Yet part of me remained stubbornly hopeful. Perhaps in a quiet corner of our house, Valerie and I would finally have a real conversation, bridging the gap instead of widening it. But the more I imagined a calm resolution, the more my gut insisted that the real storm was only beginning. The morning began innocently enough. Drizzle pattered on my windshield as I pulled into the office parking lot. I remember thinking it was just another day of juggling deadlines and dealing with Cedric Vaughn's demands. My mind, however, kept drifting to Valerie's odd mood the night before. We'd planned to talk over dinner, but she canceled at the last minute, claiming an urgent appointment. The disappointment still stung as I entered the lobby. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, matching the low hum of subdued voices and keyboards clacking in the open workspace. Everyone seemed on edge. Rumors about potential layoffs had escalated overnight, spreading like wildfire through anxious whispers. I caught snippets. I heard Cedric wants a leaner staff, or he's meeting with HR now. My stomach knotted with quiet worry. I settled at my desk, determined to keep my head down and produce the metrics Cedric loved so much. Helen Jordan appeared, balancing a tray with 2 coffees. "You look like you could use this," she said softly, setting one beside my keyboard. "Thanks," I murmured. Her kindness was a welcome break from the tension. Before I could take a sip, Cedric's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Adrian, my office, now!" Heads popped up across the room, curious eyes flicking our way. My pulse hammered as I followed Cedric, leaving Helen standing there with worry etched on her features. Cedric's office door was slightly ajar. I closed it behind me, uncertain whether that was protocol or just a gut instinct to shield myself from prying eyes. He stood behind his desk, arms folded, a brittle smile on his face that didn't touch his eyes. An unfamiliar woman, presumably from HR, hovered in the corner, tapping a pen against a clipboard. "Have a seat," Cedric said. His tone was casual, but the tension was suffocating. I lowered myself into the chair, heart thumping. "Something wrong?" Cedric pursed his lips like he was trying to strike a balance between feigned sympathy and authority. "We've had to make some tough budget decisions," he began. "Management wants a more, streamlined approach." The words landed like a body blow. My mouth went dry. "And that affects me how?" His gaze flickered to the HR rep, who cleared her throat. "We're eliminating certain positions to ensure the company remains competitive," she recited in a near monotone. "Yours is one of them." I swallowed, aware of my pulse throbbing at my temple. I just spoke with Gregory Clifton last week. He seemed pleased with my work." Cedric cut me off, raising a palm. "Gregory's not privy to all the day-to-day constraints. This is a departmental call." He must have noticed my dismay because he added, "It's not personal, Adrian. Just numbers." Not personal. Right. Could have fooled me. I'd caught him glaring at me for weeks, nitpicking my performance. My stomach churned with a mix of anger and disbelief. "So that's it? I'm out?" The HR woman slid a manila envelope across the desk. "Separation package. 2 weeks' pay in lieu of notice." I stared at the envelope. Numbness settled over me, like I was floating outside my own body. "I understand," I managed, even though I didn't. Cedric forced a hollow smile. "HR will escort you to your desk so you can gather any personal items." He pressed a button on his phone. Moments later, a security guard stepped in. My cheeks burned with humiliation. Wordlessly, the guard gestured for me to follow. Anger flared in my chest, but I kept my composure. I wasn't about to give Cedric the satisfaction of an outburst. Outside in the hallway, co-workers turned silent as I passed, some wide-eyed in sympathy. I caught Helen's gaze from across the room. She looked stunned, coffee mug clutched against her chest like a forgotten prop. "Adrian," she murmured, stepping forward. The guard shook his head, cautioning her to stand back. Her eyes blazed with indignation, yet she obeyed. At my desk, I gathered photos, a few notebooks, and personal knickknacks, a seashell Valerie once brought me from a business trip, a small plaque from my military days. Each object felt heavier than it should. My mind raced. How would I pay the mortgage? What about the bills? And worst of all, what's Valerie going to say? The security guard led me to the elevator. Nobody spoke. My vision tunneled on the reflection in the metal doors myself, shoulders tense, carrying a cardboard box with my career's remnants. By the time we reached the lobby, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Helen must have taken a different route, because she appeared by the exit door. She didn't care about the guard's disapproving stare. "This is insane," she whispered fiercely. "I swear I'll try to fix it." I believed her sincerity, but it was too late. The damage was done. I pressed my lips into a faint smile, touched by her loyalty. "Thank you, Helen." Stepping outside, I was greeted by a burst of chilly air. The sky remained overcast, matching the grim mood curling in my gut. I walked toward my car as if in a fog, occasionally hearing distant echoes of conversation behind me. Then the front doors shut, leaving me alone in the gray drizzle. At that moment, one stark truth settled in. I was unemployed, cast out by a man who cared more about metrics than people. As I pulled away from the office, shame warred with anger inside my chest. I wished for an explanation, some rationale that went beyond just numbers. Instead, I headed home to face the endless questions swirling in my mind. Little did I know that night would pile betrayal upon betrayal and forever change the way I saw Valerie. I spent the drive home replaying every second of my firing, letting the shock morph into anger. By the time I unlocked my front door, I was prepared to break the news to Valerie and plan our next steps together. Maybe she'd show me some empathy, tell me we'd figure things out. That's how spouses handled crises, right? Inside, the house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. Valerie's luggage sat by the living room sofa, standing out like an exclamation point. My heartbeat picked up. She hadn't mentioned any new trip. Why was her bag already packed? "Val?" I called, setting my box of belongings on the coffee table. My voice echoed through the hallway. My gaze landed on the framed beach photo from our honeymoon, now tilted sideways as if someone bumped it in haste. I found Valerie in the bedroom, rifling through her closet. Suits, dresses, and shoes lay scattered in half-open luggage. She didn't even glance up. My mind whirled. She can't be leaving now. We're supposed to talk about losing my job. I cleared my throat. I got fired. The words came out flat, sounding almost unreal. She paused, one hand on a blazer, eyes flicking to me with what might have been pity or annoyance. "Cedric finally did it?" she asked, voice oddly calm. I suspected it was coming. Her lack of surprise cut me. I wish you'd told me you suspected. Might have helped me prepare better." Valerie shrugged, turning back to stuff the blazer into her bag. "You know how Cedric is," she said. "He wants people who follow his lead, no questions asked. You always had a bit too much independence." I fought a wave of bitterness. She talked as if the firing was just a passing inconvenience, not the gut punch it felt like. "So," I ventured carefully, "did you hear from him yourself, or from Brandon or someone else at the office?" That name Brandon Pierce hung in the air. She stiffened, but kept her eyes on the clothes. He might have mentioned something. "Look, Adrian, that's not the big issue right now." A hollow laugh bubbled up in my chest. What could be bigger than me losing my livelihood? Valerie exhaled, finally facing me. "I'm leaving, for good." I stared, not fully processing. "Leaving like on a trip?" Or her lips tightened. "I'm done, Adrian. Our marriage, it's not working. I'm filing for divorce." The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. Why now?" I sputtered, my voice shaky with disbelief. She clenched her jaw, frustration radiating from her in waves. "I can't keep pretending. I want something better, someone who matches my ambitions." She hesitated, then added, "I've been offered a chance at Pierce Innovations, Brandon's firm. More travel, bigger deals. I'm not about to let this pass me by." A cold realization dawned. Brandon Pierce, the slick salesman rumored to swoop in on any profitable opportunity. Or woman, for that matter. I felt a sudden heaviness, as though the room was shrinking around us. "So you're leaving me for him?" "That's not fair," she snapped, though her face betrayed guilt. "I've felt smothered for a while. Your cautious approach to everything, finances, career, life goals, drives me insane. I need real drive, real success." I swallowed, my pride stung. "This is about money? Status?" My voice wavered, a storm of anger and sorrow surging. "You do realize I lost my job just this morning and you're dumping me hours later?" She slung a handbag over her shoulder, eyes flicking around as though scanning for anything else to take. "Look, I'm not heartless, but I can't stay in a dead-end marriage. Might as well rip off the Band-Aid now." Every memory of our shared life seemed to flash through my head. Wedding vows, weekend getaways, nights watching TV in comfortable silence. Now all of it was collapsing. "You're leaving me with the mortgage, the bills," I choked out, barely containing my despair. "Why do it like this?" She sighed, as if her patience were wearing thin. "I've transferred my share of savings already. The house, well, I'm sure you'll figure something out." Then, as though remembering her lines, she added softly, "I'm sorry it happened this way." I couldn't speak. My mouth felt coated in sand. The person I'd believed was my partner was peeling off layers of her old life, me included. My mind spun with unanswerable questions. Where did we go wrong? Was she planning this for weeks? She brushed past me, hauling her suitcases into the living room. I followed in a daze. She paused near the front door. "I'll have the papers drawn up," she said, almost businesslike. "We'll keep it amicable if you cooperate." "Amicable," I echoed, the word tasting bitter. She gave a stiff nod and stepped outside into the cold night. The door clicked shut, leaving only a stale silence. Minutes passed before I moved, rousing from numbness to see her car taillights vanish down the street. Grief slammed into me, followed by a wave of sheer fury. Within hours, I'd lost both job and wife, each blow orchestrated by self-serving people content to watch me crumble. The house felt cavernous and alien, a shell of the future we once planned. I stood alone, cardboard box of office knickknacks on the table, half-packed suitcases replaced by echoes. Rain tapped against the windows like an unwelcome audience clapping for a dark finale. There was no applause to be had here, just the grim understanding that my life had shattered, and I had no idea how to start picking up the shards. The next day might have been the lowest I'd felt in years. I woke to an emptiness in the house, half expecting Valerie to appear, telling me the previous night was a nightmare. Instead, her closet was bare, her toothbrush gone. The quiet was suffocating. Around midday, my phone buzzed. A text from Helen. "Meet me at Oceanside Cafe if you can. Urgent." Despite my swirling despair, curiosity prodded me out the door. The cafe was a small place near the office, known for strong coffee and stale pastries. I slipped into a booth near the back, scanning for Helen. She arrived wearing a determined expression, laptop bag slung over her shoulder. "Adrian," she said quietly, sliding in across from me. "I heard about everything." She didn't elaborate. The pity in her voice was enough. I exhaled a shaky breath. Not my best week. Helen glanced around as if ensuring no eavesdroppers. "I confronted Cedric after you left," she began. "Told him the way he fired you was unprofessional, and that you've been a key contributor. He basically shrugged me off, but I kept pushing. Surprise flickered through me. That's risky. You have a job to protect." "Some things are worth the risk," she said, eyes unwavering. "Anyway, I managed to corner Gregory Clifton this morning." She paused, leaning forward. "Gregory's got more influence than Cedric likes to admit. After I explained how valuable you are and how Cedric might have exaggerated your performance issues, Gregory said he'd investigate." My heart thudded. "Investigate? It's not like Cedric broke a law, though. He just blindsided me." Helen nodded. "True, but Gregory hates disruptions that tarnish the company's reputation. If Cedric's cut a top performer under shady pretenses, it reflects poorly on management." I felt a stir of hope, faint but real. "So what happens now?" She swallowed. "Well, it's complicated. There isn't an immediate vacancy in your old role, but Gregory suggests you could return in a consultant capacity, less pay, fewer benefits, but you'd be back inside. You could prove your worth directly to him and bypass Cedric's nonsense." A swirl of relief collided with bitterness. "Less pay might not even cover my mortgage. But it's something," I admitted. "I can't exactly pick and choose with no job. And well, you know my personal life's in shambles now." Sympathy touched her features. "I'm so sorry about Valerie. People talk, you know." She bit her lip as if debating whether to continue. "I've heard rumors about her and Brandon. Didn't want to mention it before. I hope they were just office gossip." An ache throbbed behind my ribs. "They're not rumors. I'm almost sure of it." I rubbed my temples. "Valerie told me last night she wants a divorce just hours after I lost my job." Helen reached across the table, resting a hand on mine. "That's brutal, Adrian. If you need anything help moving finances around, or just someone to vent to, I'm here." Her warmth nearly undid me. "Thank you," I whispered, clinging to her kindness like a life raft. "I'll take that consultant position if Gregory finalizes it. I need to start somewhere." She cracked a small, encouraging smile. "I'll coordinate with him. Meanwhile, consider me your eyes and ears at the company. Cedric's bound to resent this, but if I handle the details quietly, we might keep him from sabotaging you again." A twinge of guilt flared. I despised dragging Helen into my messy battle, but I couldn't refuse her help. My pride had already taken enough hits, and I had no illusions about going up against Cedric alone. "I appreciate it," I said, voice husky with emotion. We parted ways on a note of cautious optimism, Though my future remained precarious, Helen's unwavering support gave me a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't as alone in this nightmare as I feared. By late afternoon, Gregory himself called my cell. His tone was polite but guarded. "I've reviewed your performance record, Adrian, and it appears certain issues were blown out of proportion. I can't reverse Cedric's decision outright, but I'm willing to bring you on as an external consultant. Are you interested?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "I'll handle HR," Gregory continued. "Come in Monday to sign the paperwork. Let's keep it low profile." A swirl of relief mixed with a dull ache. Low profile meant I'd be tiptoeing around Cedric's authority. Still, it was a lifeline. "Thank you," I said simply. After the call, I sank onto my couch, the house silent around me. Valerie's abrupt exit still haunted the corners, reminding me of how quickly life can spin off its axis. Even so, I had a small foothold back at the company, thanks to Helen and Gregory. Maybe that was all I needed to start climbing out of this pit. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I watched it fade, thinking about how everything looked brighter before darkness took over. Tomorrow I'd sign new papers, accept a smaller paycheck, and attempt to rebuild. In a way, it felt like the first genuine step forward since my entire life collapsed. That Sunday, the house felt emptier than ever. I'd placed Valerie's remaining items random makeup, a few handbags into a box in the garage, refusing to glance at them longer than necessary. My every instinct told me to burn it all, but I didn't want a bonfire of heartbreak in my driveway. I spent most of the day applying for jobs online, ignoring calls from well-meaning acquaintances. By evening, I stared at the flickering TV, not absorbing a word of the sitcom that played. Restlessness gnawed at me. My phone lay face up on the coffee table. "Check her phone records," a small voice whispered. I'd once had access to our joint cell plan, or check her social media. It felt almost dirty to do it an intrusion, but the memory of Valerie's cold expression, her suitcase, and the mention of Brandon Pierce spurred me on. I pulled my laptop closer, opening a private browser tab. She'd never been big on posting personal details publicly, but Brandon's account was less guarded. After a few clicks, I found pictures from business events, dinners, labeled with dates. My eyes narrowed. Certain timestamps overlapped nights Valerie claimed she was out with clients. Sickened, I scrolled further, seeing her face in the background of a photo from a corporate party. She stood near Brandon, wearing a faintly possessive grin. The date stamp matched the night she told me she was working late at the office. My stomach twisted. The puzzle pieces were snapping together, so it's been going on for a while. I told myself I had enough proof, yet my chest pounded with a grim need for certainty. I opened our shared phone plan site, logging in with the old credentials she likely forgot to change. The call history made everything official. Repeated late-night calls to and from Brandon's number, some lasting nearly an hour, on the very nights she came home with vague stories about client deals or late meetings. A wave of betrayal pressed down like a physical weight on my shoulders. Around 9:30, Helen texted unexpectedly, "How are you holding up? Heard anything else from Valerie?" I stared at the screen, debating how much to confide. "I'm coping," I wrote back. "I found proof she's with Brandon. It's not just rumors." Within seconds, my phone buzzed. Helen's voice on the other end was soft yet urgent. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I hate being right about something so painful. How did you find out?" I explained the social media photos, the phone records. Each word left a bitter taste. Helen sighed. "Adrian, that's awful. Do you have someone to talk to? Family, maybe?" "My parents live across the country," I replied, forcing calm. "And I'm not keen on broadcasting this. Honestly, you're the only one who knows the details." She hesitated. "You deserve better than secrecy, but I get it, this is humiliating, especially after Cedric's stunt. Just know I'm here if you need anything." We hung up, and I set the phone down, tears of frustration burning at the corners of my eyes. The sense of betrayal wasn't just about Valerie leaving. It was about how meticulously she'd built a web of deceit. Had I been that blind? The next morning, I met Helen at a quiet coffee shop downtown. We found a corner table away from prying ears. She brought her laptop, explaining that she wanted to gather clear evidence for HR if Brandon's meddling impacted my new consultant role. I realized, with a pang, that she'd gone from colleague to ally in a matter of days. "Okay," she said, voice lowered. "Walk me through what you have." I opened my own laptop and showed her the phone logs, highlighting the suspicious calls. Then the photos from Brandon's page, some group shots, some more personal. Helen's mouth formed a tight line. "It's exactly what I feared. Valerie's not just cheating, she's flaunting it in certain circles." I rubbed my temple. "I feel like a fool." "You're not. She's the one who chose deception." Helen paused, glancing around. "What do you plan to do with this information?" "Honestly, I'm not sure," I admitted. "I just wanted the truth. Maybe I'll need it if the divorce gets messy, assuming she tries to claim half of everything. I have no illusions she'll play fair." Helen nodded sympathetically. "Divorce is never simple, but at least you're not in the dark anymore." A slow, cold resolve crystallized inside me. Valerie and Brandon had manipulated me, seized the moment of my professional downturn to do as they pleased. They're probably laughing over champagne while I rummage for backup jobs. The thought lit a spark in my gut, a spark that felt dangerously close to vengeance. But I reined it in for now, focusing on small steps. Helen squeezed my hand gently across the table. "I wish it wasn't like this, Adrian." Her kindness nearly undid me. "Me too," I whispered, pulling my hand back to close the laptop. My voice steadied. "Thank you for helping me piece this together." She offered a supportive smile. "You'll be starting the consultant role tomorrow, right? Let's just get you settled back in. Then we can decide what to do about Valerie and Brandon." I nodded, feeling a swirl of grief and determination. Valerie's betrayal was out in the open, no longer a lurking shadow. And if she and Brandon thought I'd just roll over, well, they clearly never saw me at my best. With Helen at my side, I sensed the first stirrings of a plan, one that might turn my shattered life into something stronger. Monday morning arrived with a curious mix of tension and cautious optimism. The sun had barely risen when I pulled into the company parking lot, my new workplace, now as an external consultant. A slight chill clung to the early spring air, and my breath fogged up in brief puffs as I crossed to the entrance. Every step reminded me I was back on shaky ground. Inside, the receptionist Yvonne, a woman with frosted hair and a brisk manner, glanced at me in surprise. "Adrian, right? Here for consultant duties?" The flicker in her eyes betrayed that she'd heard all about my firing. "That's me," I said calmly, adjusting the laptop bag on my shoulder. She buzzed me through, handing me a temporary badge. I navigated the corridors with new wariness. A few people threw quick, sympathetic smiles. Others kept their heads down, as if afraid my bad luck might rub off. My stomach tightened at the memory of Cedric humiliating me just a few days ago. But now it's different, I reminded myself. Gregory Clifton orchestrated my return, and Cedric can't override it easily. I found a cramped desk in a corner near the archives, far from my old station. It offered no window, no privacy, but it was better than nothing. Plus, I didn't plan on staying put forever. I was here for recon, to build my next move. As I opened my laptop, footsteps approached. Helen Jordan appeared, offering a cautious grin. "Welcome back," she whispered. "I'm sorry it's over here, but Gregory insisted it was best to keep you off Cedric's radar." "It's fine," I said, glancing around the dim alcove. "I've had worse workspaces." Her gaze lingered on me. "You look determined." My lips curved into a half-smile. "I've been thinking all weekend about how to protect myself and find justice. Let's just say my background might help." I hesitated. In the last few days, I'd mentally revisited my days in the military. I'd been no action hero, just a communication specialist who learned strategic thinking and how to read patterns. But those old habits were resurfacing, fueling me with a quiet sense of purpose. Helen nodded curiously. "What kind of background are we talking about?" "Before college, I served in a specialized communications unit. We had to gather intel, map out scenarios, anticipate threats." I pressed my lips together, memories flashing of classified briefings and intense training simulations. "I guess I'm wired to see patterns, to plan multiple steps ahead." She gave a thoughtful smile. "That's why you always seemed so methodical with data." My gaze dropped to my laptop, where the image of Valerie's phone records was still etched in my mind. Now I'm using that skill for something far more personal, but a part of me feels guilty. I'm not used to waging war on someone I once loved. Helen's voice softened. It's normal to question your methods. I won't judge. I only ask that you think carefully before crossing any lines. Revenge can burn the person seeking it too. I exhaled slowly, tension coiling under my ribs. I'm not out to harm Valerie physically or anything like that. She left me with debts, lied about everything, and is probably counting on me to collapse. I need to shield my finances and let her face the consequences of her own manipulations. Helen gave my shoulder a light squeeze. Then I'll support you. Just stay on the right side of what's legal, okay? With that, she hurried off, likely to handle a morning briefing. I settled into my chair, a determined energy thrumming beneath my skin. My mind began constructing a mental operation, like I was planning a strategic mission. Step 1. Evaluate vulnerabilities, my finances, potential sabotage from Cedric or Brandon. Step 2. Identify allies. Step 3. Document everything. I opened a fresh document titled Project Shield, letting my fingers fly over the keys. I jotted down my immediate tasks. Review all shared financial accounts with Valerie. Transfer any personal funds to safer places within legal bounds. Quietly gather evidence of Valerie's wrongdoing. A surge of adrenaline pulsed. This was the first time since my firing that I felt in control of anything. It was almost unnerving how quickly my old instincts kicked in. Mid-morning, Gregory Clifton stopped by for a quick handshake. "Glad to have you aboard," he said in a clipped tone. "Cedric's been quiet about this arrangement, which might be a good sign. Keep me updated on your progress." "Thank you," I replied, sensing the subtext. "Don't stir up drama, and we'll keep you around." "Fine. I had my own mission anyway." As noon approached, I recalled Helen's caution. Was I truly ready to cross moral lines if it came to that? My gut twisted. Then I remembered that final look on Valerie's face, the casual way she strolled out with Brandon waiting in the wings. No more illusions, I told myself. I'm done being the easy target. When the lunch break arrived, I didn't bother leaving. Instead, I stayed behind in the dim corner, drafting a strategy to protect myself. The overhead lights flickered, as though reflecting my inner conflict. In the back of my mind, I could hear Helen's warning about revenge scorching the Avenger. But as I typed, one thing felt certain. If Valerie and Brandon wanted a fight, I would give them the best strategic battle I knew how to wage. The following weekend, I found myself in the musty attic of my late grandfather's old home, searching for a stack of family records. My father had recently shipped the boxes across the country, believing they might contain some of my grandmother's keepsakes. Dust motes drifted through the sunlight, slicing in from a tiny window. The smell of stale cardboard and old paper filled my nostrils. I flipped open box after box, family photo albums, old receipts, random knickknacks. Then I found a battered envelope labeled in my grandfather's scrawled handwriting, certificates and bonds check expirations. My pulse kicked up. Curiosity overcame me, and I carefully opened it. Inside were old savings bonds, a few well-worn stock certificates from companies I'd never heard of, plus what looked like a land deed to a rural plot in Kansas. At first glance, I assumed they were worthless, but something told me not to dismiss them. My grandfather had been a quirky man, but he was no fool. I snapped a quick photo of each document and texted an old friend from my early career, Dominic Kelly, a financial advisor who owed me a favor. "Need your expertise. Are these worthless or gold?" I typed. He replied that night, "Scan them ASAP. Some older stocks have merged or soared after acquisitions." Over the next few days, Dominic helped me research. It turned out one of the stock certificates had morphed into shares of a tech firm that quietly exploded in value. Not the next Apple or anything, but enough to be a serious windfall if still valid. I practically dropped my phone when Dominic read the approximate share price. You could be sitting on high six figures, maybe 7. I stared at the phone in disbelief. My mind spun with the possibilities and the risks. If Valerie caught wind of this new asset, she'd have a field day claiming half in the divorce. The abruptness of her exit told me she expected me to remain financially hamstrung. This bond discovery could shift the entire power dynamic. But how to secure it away from Valerie's grasp, especially when we were still legally married? That's where Helen's mother, Marjorie Jordan, unexpectedly came into play. Helen had invited me for a simple dinner at their house, a modest brick home with a wheelchair ramp leading to the front door. Marjorie greeted me with a warm smile and eyes that sparkled with quiet intelligence. The living room was cozy, filled with pictures of Helen and Hannah. A fire crackled in the small fireplace, casting a comforting glow. Over roasted chicken and vegetables, I casually mentioned my predicament. Marjorie listened intently, her wheelchair parked at the head of the table. The gentle hum of the heater underscored my anxious words. If Valerie learns about these stocks, it complicates the divorce. She'll demand her cut, but they're an inheritance, and I'm not sure what the legal boundaries are. Marjorie tapped her chin thoughtfully. In many states, an inheritance can remain separate property if you keep it out of joint accounts, but your attorney should confirm that. Helen looked concerned. Valerie's pretty cunning. She might try to argue that any asset discovered during the marriage is fair game. Marjorie nodded. True. But you have a window of opportunity, especially if you move quickly to establish separate ownership or a trust. If the papers reflect that these stocks are part of a direct inheritance from your grandfather, you could shield them. Of course, she added with a note of caution, that only works if everything's documented properly and you don't commingle the funds. I sipped my iced tea, 1,000 thoughts racing. Sounds like I need a specialized lawyer. I know someone, Marjorie said. An old friend from my law firm, Days Sheridan Baylor. She's savvy with estate law. Let me reach out. Helen's eyes widened. Mom, I didn't realize you still had firm connections. Marjorie smirked. Don't underestimate me, child. I might be retired and in a wheelchair, but I haven't lost all my resources. I shot Marjorie a grateful look. I appreciate that, truly. Later, as we cleared the table, I marveled at how fate had served me this potential lifeline. It was like a hidden orchard I'd stumbled upon in the desert of my despair, seeds of opportunity ready to blossom if I managed them well. But along with hope, a sense of wariness took root. I knew that if Valerie or Brandon discovered I was no longer financially crippled, they'd retaliate. And so the stealth factor remained critical. After Hannah went to her room, Helen walked me to the door. The living room lights were dimmed, and the warmth of their home contrasted sharply with the cold night air outside. You realize this is a big step, right? She said softly. Protecting assets, preparing for a deeper conflict with Valerie. There might be no going back. I inhaled, the smell of burnt wood from the fireplace lingering on my coat. I can't unsee her betrayal, I replied, voice low. And after what Cedric did at work, I'm not naive. I have to look after myself. Helen nodded, her gaze sincere. Just keep checking in with your moral compass, okay? Money has a way of twisting people. I managed a small, tired smile. Understood. Then I squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for everything. The front door shut behind me, the crisp winter air biting my face as I walked to my car. My breath plumed white in the glow of a street lamp. I thought about the battered envelope from my grandfather and Marjorie's swift, knowledgeable counsel. Valerie thinks I'm down for the count. She won't see this coming. That thought stirred a potent mix of resolve and caution. Sometimes the smallest seeds could sprout into the mightiest oaks if nurtured in secrecy. By midweek, I refocused my attention on another opportunity, the idea of an on-demand publication service that Helen and I had once batted around. During my consultant tasks, I noticed how the tech documentation department churned out hundreds of paper manuals that often got tossed whenever software or hardware specs changed. It was a glaring waste of resources, and it struck me as the perfect chance to propose an innovative solution, one that would secure my professional future beyond Cedric's whims. Helen and I spent hours after work brainstorming at a corner booth in a local diner. The place had chipped vinyl seats and overhead fluorescents that gave everything a faint greenish tint. Still, we spread out our notes on the table, laptops open, coffee cups half empty. So, Helen began, scrolling through a spreadsheet. We switched to digital files stored on the cloud. Customers order a manual only when needed. We do short-run printing or even purely online distribution. I nodded, leaning forward. Exactly. It cuts down on waste and storage costs. The company might even profit by licensing updates to external clients who need them. No more big press runs that become outdated next quarter. She tapped her pen on the table, excitement shining in her eyes. Gregory Clifton's always looking for ways to reduce overhead. If we pitch him directly, we could bypass Cedric. Offer to set it up as a vendor service rather than an internal function. My lips curved in a sly grin. That's the real kicker. We can form our own LLC. The company hires us to manage the on-demand operation. Helen's face lit up. Then we're no longer beholden to Cedric's budget or pettiness. We'd handle everything from outside. I sipped my coffee, the warmth spreading through my chest. Of course, it'll take a chunk of capital to get started software licensing, some specialized printing gear. But if Gregory invests or greenlights a pilot, we could be up and running quickly. Helen placed her pen down, eyes flicking to mine. Adrian, is this also part of your plan to outmaneuver Valerie? I shrugged, swirling the coffee in my mug. Partly. She walked away expecting I'd be stuck with limited income. If I show signs of a major business move, she might swoop in demanding a share. My voice hardened. But if we structure the LLC properly and keep it separate, she can't easily claim it as community property. Not if we do it now, while we're in the middle of dividing assets. A note of concern washed over Helen's face. We'll need good legal advice. Your new lawyer contact Sheridan Baylor could help with the incorporation. Exactly. My grin widened. Plus, once we're established, Brandon and Cedric lose leverage. Even if they try to sabotage me from inside the company, we'll have our own operation, our own revenue stream. Helen leaned back, shoulders relaxing a bit. You've really thought this through. I exhaled. I've had time. I hesitated, voice dropping. But make no mistake, this is also about me building something that can't be so easily ripped away. Valerie taught me how vulnerable I was when I trusted blindly. She reached over and touched my wrist lightly. Well, if we're in this together, let's do it right. We'll meet with Gregory next week, show him the cost-benefit analysis. If he's in, we form the LLC. If not, we find another client. A spark of confidence flared. Deal. I glanced around the shabby diner, our makeshift war room, and marveled at how a simple idea could hold the key to both professional freedom and personal vindication. I paid the bill, and we headed out into the crisp night. Back home, I found a thick manila envelope in my mailbox, corporate guidelines for consultants, and a short note from Gregory. He invited me to propose any innovative solutions to cut waste. That was the green light I needed. I booted up my computer immediately, massaging the final details of the on-demand printing pitch. Outside my window, the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Every so often, a car rumbled by, headlights slicing through the darkness. With each line, I typed project scope, projected savings, potential profits. I felt a surge of purpose. This plan was more than just a job or a small revenge tactic. It was a lifeline to a future where I controlled my destiny. Before I shut down for the night, I pictured Valerie's smug expression from the day she left, that faint smile as she rolled her suitcase out the door. If she believed I was destined to scrape by, she had no idea what I was plotting in return. It wasn't just about besting her. It was about rebuilding my life on my own terms, and if my old military instincts for strategy could help me do it, then so be it. A week later, the overhead fluorescents in Gregory Clifton's office hummed softly as Helen and I set up our presentation. Through the glass windows, I spotted Cedric in a far corridor, scowling like a hawk that sensed prey slipping out of reach. Good. Let him scowl. This meeting was private invite only. Gregory strode in, wearing a professional smile. He gestured for us to begin. Helen took the lead, walking him through slides, showing how the current manual printing system bled money. Each new product revision meant thousands of old manuals destined for the shredder. Under our proposed model, she explained, clicking to the next slide, the company only prints a manual or updates a digital file when needed. We coordinate production through an on-demand vendor. She glanced at me pointedly, which we aim to become. Gregory's brows lifted. So we outsource everything to you two? I stepped forward. Essentially, yes. Helen and I would handle digital management, short-run printing contracts, and distribution. The company would pay only for the materials actually used. No overhead for large inventory. Gregory leaned back in his chair, hand on his chin. Cost savings? Helen flicked to a chart. We estimate a 2,030% reduction in printing-related expenses. Possibly more if we scale. A spark of interest lit Gregory's eyes. That's not trivial, and your operation, let's call it L&M Solutions, would absorb the initial setup cost? I nodded. We'd front the cost with help from a private backer if needed. I shot a quick glance at Helen. We hadn't formalized that part, but we had leads a small loan from an online lender or even direct investment from me once my stock inheritance was secured. We can recoup through a service fee arrangement over time. Gregory folded his arms. I like the concept. Cedric might protest losing internal control, but from a corporate standpoint, it's compelling. He paused, eyeing me. You two seem serious about forming this vendor operation? I swallowed any residual nerves. We're dead serious. We can deliver better, cheaper results than the current system. A slow smile spread across Gregory's face. All right. I'll push this upward and see if we can pilot it. Keep it low profile for now. If we succeed, I'll ensure Cedric doesn't sabotage it. He rose, offering a handshake. Great work. We left his office with adrenaline coursing through my veins. Outside, Cedric lurked, brow furrowed. Something going on? He asked, too casually. Just a standard consultant update, I replied blandly, strolling past him. Helen hid a smirk. Once we were out of earshot, she squeezed my arm. We did it. Step one, anyway, I murmured, scanning the corridor for any eavesdroppers. If Gregory's on board, we form L&M Solutions. Then we're unstoppable. That evening, I got a call from Sheridan Baylor, the lawyer Marjorie had recommended. Her voice was crisp, professional. Marjorie told me you need help structuring a new business and possibly protecting personal assets? Yes, I said. We're launching a vendor service and I'm in the midst of a divorce. I need to ensure this new entity stays separate so my soon-to-be ex-wife doesn't claim half. She chuckled wryly. Common scenario, common. We'll set up an LLC with a clear timeline showing the business formed after your separation date. Proper documentation is key. Relief swelled in me. Thank you. The next day, I mentioned to Helen that we might need a reliable accountant as well. She immediately thought of an ex-colleague named Fiona Hastings, a meticulous finance whiz who once butted heads with Brandon Pierce. Perfect. If Fiona disliked Brandon, she might relish helping me structure the finances to outflank him and Valerie. We arranged a casual meeting at a quiet cafe. Fiona turned out to be sharp-tongued but friendly, sporting an oversized handbag and thick-framed glasses. I can handle the LLC's bookkeeping, she said, taking a sip of peppermint tea. Just keep me in the loop on any strategic moves. Surprises kill good accounting. I shot a half grin. No surprises. We'll be transparent with you, Fiona. We just need to ensure everything's bulletproof from a legal standpoint. Bulletproof. Got it. Fiona's eyes gleamed. I hear Brandon Pierce's name swirling around your situation, so count me doubly in. Helen tossed me a knowing look. Our circle of allies was growing. We were no longer just two colleagues with a dream. We had legal backup, an accountant, and the ear of an influential executive. It felt like forging an army for a coming battle. By the end of the week, we convened in the same diner where Helen and I first brainstormed. Now Sheridan and Fiona joined us, laptops open, discussing timelines for the LLC, the brand name we'd pick, and the pilot phase with Gregory. After an hour of intense conversation, Sheridan closed her laptop with a decisive snap. We can finalize the LLC next week, she said. Then you can present the plan to the board. If they bite, you're in business. Helen and I exchanged a glance that was equal parts excitement and nerves. We both knew that once we stepped onto this path, we'd have to brace for retaliation from Valerie or Brandon if they suspected they were being cut out of a lucrative deal. But looking around at my new allies, Marjorie, Sheridan, Fiona, plus Helen by my side, I felt a surge of confidence. Leaving the diner, the sky was a soft lavender, the setting sun painting the clouds in pinkish hues. I breathed in the cool air, a sense of momentum thrumming beneath my skin. We weren't just planning a business venture. We were assembling the scaffolding of a future free from Cedric's manipulations and Valerie's greed. A future where my newly discovered assets might flourish safely. And if that future also included a measure of payback, so be it. My phone buzzed with a text from Gregory. Looking forward to your formal pitch. Keep this under wraps for now. We can't risk sabotage. I smiled. The stage was set. We had the concept, the allies, and the legal framework in motion. Allies gather indeed, I thought, a steely note of determination sparking in my chest. The real clash lay ahead, but for the first time I felt armed and ready. The next phase would be about launching our plan and ensuring Valerie and Brandon never saw the hammer coming. A light drizzle tapped against the courthouse windows, creating a subdued rhythm as I walked through the marble-floored lobby. Early morning light filtered in through tall glass panels, illuminating rows of uncomfortable benches. My lawyer, Sheridan Baylor, fell into step beside me, her heels clicking decisively. She wore a charcoal skirt suit and carried a battered leather briefcase that looked as though it had seen 100 battles and emerged victorious every time. "Ready?" she asked in a low voice. I inhaled, squaring my shoulders. As I'll ever be. For weeks, Valerie's legal team had bombarded me with demands and accusations, each letter dripping with the insinuation that I was hiding money. Ironically, I was but legally, through inheritance disclaimers that Sheridan had meticulously put in place. Now, it was time for the first official hearing on how we'd split marital assets and handle temporary spousal support. Inside the designated conference room, Valerie and her attorney, a smooth-talking man named Clint Darby, were already seated. Valerie wore a sharp blazer that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage back when I had a mortgage I could comfortably pay. She crossed her legs, offering me a practiced, aloof smile. "Adrian," she said in a voice that dripped with false civility. I gave a curt nod, sliding into the chair opposite her. Sheridan set her briefcase on the table, pulling out 2 neat stacks of documents. "Let's discuss the proposed settlement," Sheridan said, tone brisk. Clint peered over his wire-rimmed glasses, turning pages. "Valerie is entitled to a fair share of Adrian's current and future income. We understand he's consulting now, but his skill set should yield a high salary soon. Therefore, we propose an amount that accounts for the standard of living established during the marriage." I stifled a grimace. Valerie's standard of living involved designer clothes, fancy trips, and lavish dinners she often shared with Brandon Pierce. The entire time, I'd been clueless, footing half the bills while she played me for a fool. Sheridan's smile held a razor's edge. "Actually, Mr. Morris's financial statements paint a different picture. He's near insolvency after covering joint debts, mortgage, credit cards, and personal loans, most of which Miss Morris abandoned upon leaving." She slid a spreadsheet across the table. "He's living on the bare minimum." Clint's eyes narrowed, scanning the pages. "This can't be right. Valerie says Adrian has assets." Sheridan lifted an eyebrow. "We haven't seen evidence of any such assets, and per state law, an inheritance is separate property if not commingled. Do you have proof of commingling?" Valerie's face tightened. "Adrian's always been careful," she said, her tone faintly accusatory. "Too careful. I want a forensic accountant to investigate." A flicker of tension flared in my chest, but Sheridan spoke up before I could. "We welcome an accountant's review, provided Miss Morris agrees to share the cost." She tapped her pen on the table. "Though it might be a waste of time, given Mr. Morris's debts." Clint and Valerie exchanged glances clearly. They hadn't expected us to be so prepared. Valerie's jaw clenched. She must have pictured a scenario in which I'd crumble and hand over whatever I had left. Instead, we were playing the game on our terms. A knock at the door interrupted us. A court staffer stuck his head in. "Judge McGuire will see you in 15 minutes. With that, the 4 of us collected our papers. Outside the conference room, Valerie pulled me aside, ignoring Clint's furrowed brow. "Why are you doing this?" she hissed under her breath. "We both know you're not broke." My pulse quickened, but I forced calm. "I've covered a mountain of expenses since you left, Val. That's the reality." I met her gaze evenly. "If you think I'm sitting on some gold mine, prove it." Her cheeks reddened, lips parting as if she wanted to hurl accusations. In the end, she just gave a sharp exhale and stormed off with Clint in tow. I stood there, heart pounding. Part of me felt a pang of guilt I'd once thought of her as my partner in life. But that partner was gone, replaced by a woman who saw our marriage as a stepping stone to bigger status with Brandon Pierce. Sheridan appeared, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You did well. Let them suspect. Without concrete proof, it's just speculation. I nodded stiffly, pushing down the swirl of emotions. In the hallway, we passed an old wooden bench where Helen sat waiting for moral support. She offered me a small, encouraging smile. Everything okay? As okay as it can be. I glanced at the closed doors leading to Judge McGuire's chambers. Valerie's doubling down. She suspects I'm hiding something. Helen lowered her voice. She can suspect all she wants. Suspecting isn't the same as proving. My chest loosened slightly at her reassurance. Thanks. We stepped into the judge's office for the preliminary hearing, tension bristling in the air. Clint rattled off numbers, portraying Valerie as an abandoned spouse who deserved immediate maintenance. Sheridan countered with evidence of my mounting debts and limited consultant pay. Judge McGuire listened, a neutral mask on his lined face. When it was done, he set a small provisional sum for spousal support far less than Valerie demanded, and scheduled the final divorce trial date for later in the season. We filed out, the conclusion a stalemate in legal terms, but a small victory for me. Valerie's expression was thunderous. She'd wanted to corner me financially, but we'd slipped away. Sheridan patted my arm, murmuring, "The real fight is at the final hearing. Keep your composure. If she overplays her hand, we'll be ready." As I exited the courthouse, the drizzle had turned to steady rain. It soaked my jacket, but I barely felt it. This was only the opening salvo in a larger war. Valerie had no idea just how many defenses I'd built. Beneath the tension, a quiet sense of satisfaction thrummed through me. We're not done, Valerie. Not by a long shot. A few mornings later, I found myself in Gregory Clifton's spacious corner office, sunlight streaming across the carpet like a warm spotlight. My reflection in the glass showed me standing beside Helen, laptop in hand. Cedric Vaughn lurked near the door, arms folded stiffly, his scowl as deep as ever. Gregory scanned the latest progress report for L&M Solutions, our budding vendor service. "This looks promising," he said, voice measured. "Initial costs are higher than we hoped, but the potential savings for the company remain significant. Cedric, any concerns?" Cedric sneered. "Plenty, actually. This entire arrangement feels unorthodox. Adrian was fired." Gregory held up a hand, silencing him. "Adrian's consultant status has proved beneficial so far. We're aiming for innovation, remember?" Helen leaned forward, maintaining a polite tone. "We've run test batches. No major hiccups. Our pilot clients are pleased with quicker turnarounds." Cedric's jaw worked, but he couldn't refute the data. "Fine," he muttered, then pivoted. "There's also the matter of Brandon Pierce. He handles multiple corporate accounts, and I'm told Adrian's presence might cause tension." My muscles tensed at Brandon's name. The tension Cedric spoke of was no doubt Brandon's fear that I'd undermine his corporate deals. And he wasn't wrong. My plan involved revealing Brandon's unscrupulous tactics. I forced a neutral expression. "I'm here to do my job, Cedric. Brandon's personal issues aren't my concern." Gregory cleared his throat. "Let's keep personal matters out of it. If Brandon's behavior impacts the company, we'll address it separately." He looked pointedly at Cedric. "Is that clear?" Cedric's glare flicked to me, then to Helen. "Crystal," he ground out. With that, Gregory dismissed us, and Cedric stalked off in the opposite direction. Helen blew out a slow breath, stepping into the hallway with me. He's seething. Because he knows we're succeeding. I kept my voice low. Meanwhile, Brandon's about to have his own crisis. I didn't elaborate, but I recalled how Fiona Hastings, our newly enlisted accountant, had quietly gathered hints that Brandon might be double-dipping on client commissions. He'd allegedly set up shell accounts to reroute funds. We just needed the final puzzle pieces to blow it all open. That afternoon, I rendezvoused with Fiona in a quiet conference room. She'd laid out spreadsheets and bank statements. "It's definitely fishy," she murmured, tapping a finger on a suspicious deposit. "Brandon receives these small, repeated transfers from an entity called Southeast Marketing. But I can't trace a legitimate contract. Looks more like a slush fund." A stir of triumph coursed through me. "If we present this to Gregory and it proves fraudulent, Brandon's done." Fiona's eyes gleamed. "You said he played a part in your termination? This is fitting payback." I tried not to let bitterness seep in. "He deserves more than a pink slip. But exposing him professionally is enough. Once he's cornered, maybe Valerie's illusions about him will shatter too. As if on cue, Helen knocked softly, poking her head in. She carried a folder. Just got this from a contact in HR. Brandon's been cited for unprofessional conduct with 2 female employees. Nothing formal yet, but it's in his file. She placed the folder beside Fiona's documents. We have quite the stack of ammunition. A small grin formed on my lips. Time for a well-orchestrated reveal, then. The plan was simple. We'd feed these findings quietly to Gregory. If Gregory confronted Brandon with evidence of financial impropriety plus employee complaints, Brandon would be forced to defend himself. Cedric, who had a history of backing Brandon's deals, would also be sucked into the fallout. Within days, Gregory summoned Brandon to a meeting. We caught wind that voices were raised, then hushed, behind the closed doors of the executive suite. By lunchtime, rumor had it Gregory had removed Brandon from a key project pending further investigation. The corridors buzzed with speculation. Cedric cornered me in the break room, his stance aggressive. You have a hand in this, Morris, because if Brandon goes down, it doesn't look good for the sales numbers, and that impacts all of us. I took a breath, playing innocent. Cedric, Brandon's issues are his own. I'm just focusing on the on-demand publication project. He jabbed a finger at me. You think you're clever, but watch yourself. Gregory isn't the only one with influence. Helen stepped in before I could retort. Threatening employees, Cedric? That's unwise. He shot her a look of pure venom and stomped away. The tension in my chest vibrated like a live wire, but a faint sense of satisfaction tingled beneath it. Brandon's fall has begun. Cedric is shaking. The corporate chessboard was tilting in my favor. Later that evening, I met Helen for coffee in a quiet cafe. Rain streaked the windows, city lights shimmering on the wet pavement. We're playing a dangerous game, she mused, hands wrapped around a latte cup. What if Cedric or Brandon strike back harder? I shrugged, feeling the weight of her concern. They might, but we can't let that paralyze us. They fired me, humiliated me, then Brandon lured Valerie away to further his own gains. I won't stand aside anymore. Her eyes softened. I understand. She reached across the small table, resting her palm on the back of my hand. For a moment, the hum of the espresso machine and the chatter of customers faded. I felt the warmth of her touch and realized just how much she'd risked to stand with me. In that instant, I saw a flicker of something beyond mere friendship in her gaze, but we left the thought unspoken. There was still a war to finish. Outside, the rain let up, leaving the streets glistening like polished silver. My mind churned with the next moves. Valerie was still pushing for a big divorce settlement. Brandon was flailing under accusations, and Cedric prowled like a cornered predator. Yet for all the tension, an undercurrent of triumph kept me moving. The plan was working one calculated step at a time. Soon, I thought, they'd face the consequences of every betrayal they'd dished out. A week later, the atrium of the downtown hotel thrummed with lively music and clinking glasses. A corporate event was in full swing. Management from multiple branches mingled, exchanging pleasantries under glittering chandeliers. Long buffet tables offered elaborate hors d'oeuvres. I'd arrived in a dark suit, uneasy about being in the same room as Brandon or Cedric, but Gregory insisted, "Your presence represents the new direction of our documentation strategy." Helen arrived shortly after, wearing a simple yet elegant black dress, looking poised despite the swirling tension. "Any sign of Brandon?" she asked, scanning the crowd. I nodded toward a corner near the bar. Brandon stood in conversation with a middle-aged man in a sleek suit. The man's posture screamed confrontation, arms crossed, jaw set. Brandon gestured wildly, trying to keep his cool. As Helen and I discreetly edged closer, snatches of the heated exchange drifted our way. "You promised results," the man hissed, voice taut with anger. "All you did was funnel money without delivering a single contract." Brandon's face was slick with sweat. "Keep your voice down," he hissed back. "I told you I'm dealing with unexpected problems." The man snorted. "My patience is done. Refund or I report you." With that, he slammed his drink onto a side table and stalked off. Brandon's mask of bravado cracked briefly, revealing pure panic. Then he spotted us watching. Helen looped her arm through mine, guiding me away before Brandon could lash out. "Looks like his shady deals are unraveling," she whispered, voice tinged with both satisfaction and caution. Across the room, Cedric hovered at a tall table, sipping something amber from a crystal glass, clearly on edge. He caught sight of me and Helen, quickly turned away. A hush rippled through nearby clusters of guests as they noticed Brandon's meltdown near the bar. I overheard a few murmurs. "He's been under investigation. I heard he's losing clients left and right. Poor guy looks desperate." Valerie, however, was nowhere to be seen. Rumor had it she'd grown distant from Brandon once the first whiff of scandal surfaced. Classic Valerie, always seeking the next comfortable harbor. Suddenly, a fresh commotion erupted. A stout older woman in a plain business suit marched up to Brandon, brandishing a folder. I recognized her as one of the employees who'd quietly filed a complaint against him. "You can't run from this," she said loudly. "Our lawyers have your emails. We know what you did." Brandon's face blanched. People turned to stare. The hush descended like a thick blanket, punctuated by an uneasy cough or two. Brandon attempted a dismissive laugh, but his eyes darted around, seeking an exit. "This is a private event," he blustered. "You have no right." "I have every right to demand accountability," she shot back, voice shaking with anger. "You used your position to pressure me into a lopsided contract. Don't think I've forgotten your threats." A bolt of adrenaline shot through me, recalling how Brandon had manipulated me at work to set me up for failure. But now it was all coming back to him, publicly. He turned as though to seek Cedric's help. Cedric, however, was conveniently slipping away through a side door, refusing to meet Brandon's desperate gaze. Helen tugged at my sleeve. "We should keep our distance. No need to be pulled in." I nodded, but deep inside, a swirl of emotions roiled triumph, disbelief, and an odd twinge of pity. I wanted justice, but seeing someone publicly cornered like this, it's a hollow victory if I let it consume me. Still, I couldn't deny a cold satisfaction at the spectacle. In the aftermath, Brandon stormed out, the older woman on his heels, and gossip rippled throughout the hotel atrium. Groups broke off to whisper, some glancing my way. I overheard bits. "Didn't he break up a marriage?" "Karma, I guess." Helen and I slipped onto a balcony overlooking the twinkling city lights. The air was crisp, a welcome contrast to the tense, heated atmosphere inside. She exhaled slowly. That was dramatic. "Yeah," I murmured. My chest felt tight. I wanted him exposed, but seeing it unfold like that was harsher than I expected. She laid a hand on my arm. "Revenge never tastes as sweet as we imagine." Silence settled between us, broken only by the distant hum of traffic below. My mind drifted to Valerie, her arrogance, her betrayal. A part of me wondered if she'd show up tonight, see Brandon's downfall, realize she bet on the wrong horse. But the moment passed. The emptiness that accompanied Brandon's public ruin reminded me that no matter how much I tore him down, the pain of Valerie's betrayal lingered. We returned inside, only to find Cedric cornered by Gregory near a tall, potted plant. Gregory spoke in a low, clipped tone. "Your endorsement of Pierce's deals is in question, Cedric. Our internal review suggests you ignored multiple warnings about his methods. Care to explain?" Cedric sputtered, face reddening. I didn't have concrete proof. I was focusing on other priorities. Priorities that involved firing good employees to cover budgets? Gregory's stare was icy. "We'll discuss your future in the next board meeting." Cedric's eyes flicked to me with raw hatred. I almost pitied him. Almost. But I recalled how he'd marched me out with security, smirking. Perhaps it was poetic that Gregory now gave him a taste of the same fear and uncertainty. Helen tugged my sleeve again. "Enough drama for one night. Let's head out." We slipped away, leaving the swirl of scandal behind. My mind replayed the scene. Brandon confronted by furious clients, Cedric stripped of his smug confidence. A wave of retribution had swept through that atrium, and it carried with it a strange emptiness. Victory is victory, I told myself as I drove home in silence. But I couldn't deny a hollow ache in my chest, as though the illusions of closure were as fragile as the wine glasses that had just shattered in that hotel's golden glow. 2 weeks later, I found myself once again navigating the polished corridors of the courthouse. Only this time, the final day of my divorce proceedings loomed. My suit felt a bit looser maybe from the stress of the past months. Sheridan strode beside me, calm and collected as always. The courtroom itself was spacious and austere. Rows of benches faced a raised platform where Judge McGuire presided. Fluorescent lights buzzed quietly overhead. Valerie sat at one table, her posture stiff, eyes flicking with annoyance when I entered. Clint, her lawyer, wore a tense expression as though bracing for another unpleasant surprise. My heart thudded. This was it, months of tension, meticulously planted seeds of misdirection, all culminating in a few hours of legal argument. Sheridan offered me a reassuring nod. "Stay steady," she whispered. Judge McGuire wasted no time. "We're here to finalize asset division and any potential spousal support requests." He glanced at Clint. "Begin, counsel." Clint launched into a speech about Valerie's lifestyle, how she'd supported me emotionally, I almost snorted at that, and how she deserved a significant share of marital assets to maintain the status she was accustomed to. Valerie kept her eyes forward, jaw set. I felt a pulse of anger but forced myself to remain composed. Then Sheridan rose. "Your Honor, we have clear documentation of the debts Mr. Morris covered after Miss Morris's abrupt departure. We also have proof that certain luxury expenses were Miss Morris's personal indulgences, not shared marital needs. As for alleged hidden income, we see no basis for that claim." She presented charts, receipts, and a timeline. My finances on paper looked modest, just enough consultant wages to get by, plus the staggering bills left behind. Even if Valerie suspected the inheritance or the new business venture, she couldn't pin them as marital property. They were either post-separation or strictly inherited. Sheridan had done her homework. Valerie's face tightened, her annoyance shifting to barely concealed rage. She must have expected me to cave under the complexity of the legal system. Clint tried to volley with a snide remark. He's too broke for spousal support, yet invests in a side business? How is that possible? Sheridan's lips curved in a cool smile. The business in question, L&M Solutions, was formed after Miss Morris filed for divorce. Legally, it's not joint property. Any capital came from Mr. Morris's separate connections or future credit arrangements. She paused pointedly. He's allowed to start anew, especially since Miss Morris walked away from their marriage debts. Clint sputtered, but the judge rapped his gavel once, calling for order. We spent the next hour with each side hashing out finer details. Credit card balances, car payments, leftover furniture. Every so often, Valerie would glare at me, lips pursed as if I'd personally orchestrated her downfall. A final recess preceded the judge's ruling. While we waited in the hallway, Valerie approached, ignoring her lawyer's attempts to stop her. "You've turned into a real piece of work, Adrian," she whispered, voice taut. "I used to think you were naive. Now I see you're a snake." I inhaled sharply, keeping my tone low. "Maybe I learned from the best," I replied. Her eyes flashed. There was no regret or apology, just resentment. With a frustrated huff, she spun on her heels and rejoined Clint. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge McGuire gave a measured gaze. "After reviewing the evidence, I find Miss Morris's request for substantial spousal support unwarranted. She will not receive long-term maintenance. As for asset division, Mr. Morris shall retain the current home equity, what little remains minus a minor reimbursement to Miss Morris for certain shared improvements. Personal property is divided as previously agreed." He glanced over his notes. "Furthermore, I see no conclusive proof of additional hidden income. Therefore, Miss Morris's claim of entitlement to a larger share is denied." He looked at Valerie. "Miss Morris, you may seek further forensic analysis at your expense, but given the time and cost, I suggest finalizing as is." A hush fell. Valerie's face was a storm of disbelief and fury. My stomach twisted with a blend of relief and the ache of finality. The gavel came down with a resounding knock. "This court rules the marriage dissolved under the terms outlined. Best of luck to both parties moving forward." That was it. Months of anguish distilled into a few phrases. Valerie snapped her folder shut, eyes brimming with rancor. She rose and strode out without a backward glance, Clint hustling to keep up. I stood, heart pounding. Sheridan patted my arm. "Congratulations, Adrian." Or condolences, depending on how you see it. I managed a weak laugh. "Both," I guess. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast warm light on the courthouse steps. Helen waited near a stone pillar, posture tense until she saw me emerge. She read the expression on my face, her shoulders sagging in relief. "All done?" she asked softly. "All done," I said. "The judge granted me most of what I needed. Valerie's out." Helen exhaled. "I'm glad. You deserve some peace." Yet as we walked away, I felt a hollow space in my chest, a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. In many ways, I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. Freedom from Valerie's grasp, protection of my assets, and a fresh start. But the emotional scars of betrayal lingered. People say revenge is sweet, but in that moment, the taste was bittersweet at best. I couldn't shake the sense that my life, though finally unbound from Valerie, was still picking up shards from a shattered bond. We paused at the sidewalk, traffic rumbling by. Helen slipped her arm through mine in a gesture of quiet solidarity. I closed my eyes, letting the city's hum fill the silence. The divorce was over, the cunning plan had worked, and Valerie's hold on me was severed. A door had slammed shut, and somewhere ahead a new one beckoned uncertain, but mine to open. The first morning after the divorce decree, I woke up with an odd sensation of weightlessness, like I'd shed a heavy coat I'd worn too long. The sky was tinged with pale gold, sunlight brushing the edges of my bedroom curtains. Yet behind that lightness, a faint ache lingered. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting my gaze drift to where Valerie's belongings used to be. The divorce might have freed me legally, but it hadn't erased the memory of betrayal. I forced myself up, threw on a shirt, and headed downstairs. My modest house felt quieter now, missing even the echoes of arguments. Over a quick breakfast of coffee and toast, I scrolled through messages on my phone. One from Helen. "Hope you're okay. Busy day at the office, meet me for lunch." A small, grateful smile curved my lips. She'd been a steady presence, guiding me through these turbulent months. At the office-turned-vendor space for L&M Solutions, I found the team already buzzing. We'd set up shop in a loft-like space with exposed brick walls and tall windows, a drastic improvement from the cramped corner I'd once inhabited under Cedric's watch. Potted plants dotted the perimeter, courtesy of Helen's green thumb, brightening the airy room. Fiona Hastings, our accountant, was hunched over a spreadsheet. She waved me over, her dark-rimmed glasses glinting in the morning sun. "We got 3 more inquiries about on-demand manuals," she said, flipping her monitor around. "Word is spreading that we're faster and cheaper than the old system." "That's fantastic," I murmured, scanning the numbers. After so many months of stress, seeing tangible growth felt surreal. "Keep me posted on the overhead costs. I don't want us to expand too fast and lose control." Fiona gave me a quick thumbs up, then beckoned to a new hire, Devin, a soft-spoken graphic designer we'd just brought on to handle layout updates. Devin nodded politely, already deep in conversation with Helen about a new client logo. Observing them, I felt a surge of pride. This is what I wanted. A thriving company where people worked in harmony without the corporate backstabbing that haunted my old job. Still, a hollow space in my chest reminded me that I hadn't fully processed the emotional damage from Valerie's deceit. By midday, my concentration wavered, and I felt the need to step outside. That's when Helen caught up with me, coat in hand. "Ready for lunch?" she asked gently, concern in her eyes. I managed a smile. "Let's do it." We walked to a little cafe down the block. The midday sun cast long shafts of light across the sidewalk. The conversation started light progress on the business, Devin's design prowess, a possible new contract with a biotech firm. Yet Helen's expression turned serious as we settled into a corner booth. "Adrian," she began softly, "how are you feeling now that it's officially over with Valerie?" I fiddled with my coffee mug, feeling the swirl of relief and bitterness congeal in my chest. Honestly, relieved one moment, resentful the next. She wasted so many years of my life. But I also feel guilty for orchestrating that entire plan to keep her in the dark about my assets. Helen reached across the table, resting her hand on mine. "You did what you had to. She was cruel, Adrian, and you protected yourself. But it's normal to question the lengths you went." I let out a shaky breath. "It's like a mental hangover. My chest feels lighter, but my mind keeps replaying how I let the marriage fall apart. Her gaze was empathetic. You didn't let it fall apart alone. Valerie cheated and took advantage. That's not on you. Outside the window, a light breeze rustled the tree branches, scattering a few leaves across the sidewalk. I watched them swirl, an unspoken metaphor for how quickly life's certainties could be carried away. I guess you're right, I said quietly, but I can't just flip a switch on the pain. Helen squeezed my hand. Give it time. Let yourself heal. We finished lunch, the mood lighter as we chatted about a big prospective client from an e-commerce startup. Back at the loft office, I dived into calls and project planning, a welcome distraction from introspection. Yet, whenever my mind drifted, I recalled Helen's words. It's normal to question the lengths you went. That night, I found myself in front of my laptop, rereading old text messages from Valerie, back when we were newlyweds and she wrote affectionate notes daily. I felt a jab of sadness and closed them before the ache deepened. In their place, I opened a new email from the biotech firm, brimming with excitement about our service. Something about the future overshadowed the past for a moment, leaving me with an odd mixture of sorrow and hope. It struck me then, heartbreak doesn't vanish overnight. But each step forward, each sign of success, each gentle push from Helen made the weight a bit easier to carry. Perhaps that's how healing worked. One small piece of progress balanced against the lingering fragments of pain, until one day you woke up and found the pain no longer defined you. I shut down the laptop and glanced at my silent living room. The emptiness no longer felt suffocating. It was a blank canvas. My marriage to Valerie was behind me, and though regret flickered in the corners of my mind, the promise of something better, true companionship, genuine respect glimmered on the horizon. Warm sunlight spilled through the windows of Marjorie Jordan's living room, reflecting off polished photo frames. I'd stopped by for a rare weekend visit to discuss some charitable ideas she'd proposed. Marjorie sat in her wheelchair, posture dignified despite her condition. Helen hovered near the kitchen preparing tea while Hannah sprawled on a rug with her sketchbook. "So," Marjorie said, folding her hands in her lap, "Helen tells me your vendor company is thriving. Have you considered how you might give back? Sometimes focusing on a broader purpose can help you move past darker motivations." I let out a small laugh. "You mean my revenge spree?" Marjorie's eyes sparkled. "You said it, not me. But yes, thinking long-term can be cathartic. You can use your success for something beyond settling scores." I mulled it over, recalling the sense of hollowness that accompanied Brandon and Cedric's downfall. "Maybe. Any thoughts on where to start?" She nodded. "I once served on the board of a local adult literacy program. They need updated materials, especially digital. Maybe you can adapt your on-demand approach to help them produce affordable textbooks." A flicker of intrigue stirred. "That's brilliant, actually. We could donate the platform at cost, or find sponsors to offset printing." Just then, Hannah slid over, a drawing of a building with bright flowers etched on her notepad. "Is that for the Literacy Center?" she asked, looking up with big brown eyes. Marjorie chuckled. "He hasn't even agreed yet, dear. But he's thinking about it." Helen returned with a tray of steaming mugs, shooting me a kind smile. "If you do it, I can help coordinate. I know a few folks who might want to sponsor the printing costs. It'll be a good test of your system's flexibility in the non-profit sector." I sipped the fragrant tea, picturing L&M Solutions pivoting from cutthroat corporate work to something more philanthropic. The idea gave me a surprising sense of peace, like a door opening to a sunlit room I didn't know existed. "Count me in," I said softly. Hannah beamed, then offered me her sketch, a whimsical rendering of a library building with cartoonish books dancing in the windows. "You can use this for your logo," she joked, but her shy smile suggested a hint of genuine pride. I chuckled, examining the childlike artwork. "I love it. Maybe we will." Later, Helen and I strolled through Marjorie's small backyard garden raised flower beds designed for wheelchair accessibility. Tulips swayed in a gentle breeze, their colors vivid against the greenery. Helen ran her fingers over a bright red bloom. "I'm proud of you, you know." I tilted my head. "For what?" "For looking forward instead of back." She paused, glancing at me. "And for being so sweet to Hannah. She's warming up to you, believe me. She's usually cautious around new people. A warmth spread through my chest. I like her. She's creative and honest. It's refreshing. Helen's eyes lingered on me, something tender in her expression. If there's one thing I've learned these past months, it's that real connection isn't about drama or manipulation. It's about genuine support, day in and day out. For a heartbeat, we stood there, the moment thick with unspoken feelings. The air carried the scent of damp soil and fresh blossoms. I opened my mouth, half ready to acknowledge the growing closeness between us, but she gave my hand a gentle squeeze and led me back inside, perhaps deciding we should let the moment remain unspoken for now. The next day, I took a leap of faith and purchased a small commercial space downtown for L&M Solutions. It was a bold move, especially since we'd been operating from a rented loft. But with new contracts flowing in, it felt like the right time to expand. The building needed a facelift, cracked paint, old wiring, but I saw potential in the high ceilings and sturdy frame. When I told Helen, her eyes lit up. A permanent HQ? That's huge. I grinned, picturing the interior turned into a modern hub with sleek desks and a cozy lounge for brainstorming. We'll renovate it, make it something we're proud to show clients. She bit her lip, excitement dancing across her face. And maybe a small studio area so we can do video tutorials or promotional material? Absolutely. Anything that helps us keep growing. That afternoon, we toured the space with a contractor, exploring everything from the battered reception area to a hidden courtyard in the back. Helen spotted a scruffy patch of grass, envisioning potted plants and maybe a cafe-style table for outdoor breaks. Walking through each room, I couldn't help but notice how the future felt wide open. No more living under the shadow of Valerie's ambitions or Cedric's oppressive management. In my mind, I saw a place filled with collaboration and trust, free from the toxic energy that once plagued me. As we left the building, the contractor's footsteps echoing behind us, Helen murmured, "I feel like this is more than just a new office. It's a statement." "Yeah," I replied, watching the late afternoon sun gild the edges of the roof. A statement that I'm done letting the past define me. Her hand brushed mine, a soft, fleeting contact that steadied something inside me. For the first time in months, I felt entirely grounded. A man who'd walked through betrayal and fury, emerging on the other side with a plan for a brighter tomorrow. If heartbreak had been the push, then building this new future was the healing I never knew I needed. We were a few weeks into renovating our new headquarters when a curveball flew in from nowhere. It started innocently enough, a series of missed calls from an unknown number. Eventually, Fiona got hold of me at the site, where I stood in dusty jeans, helping the contractor mark spots for new power outlets. She sounded tense. "There's a problem," she said. "A legal letter arrived at our P.O. box. It's from an attorney representing someone claiming partial ownership of your company's name." My heart lurched. Partial ownership? That's impossible. "That's what I thought," Fiona replied. "But we can't ignore it. I'll forward you the documents." That evening, Helen and I pored over the letter in the glow of a single lamp, the rest of my living room shrouded in shadows. The claim, a man named Keith Reynolds, alleged he'd come up with the on-demand concept alongside me and wanted a slice of the profits. I'd never even heard of him. Helen frowned, scanning the text. "This reeks of a scam. Could he be a proxy for Valerie or Cedric trying to sabotage you?" I rubbed my temples. Could be. Or maybe Brandon's behind it, hoping to unnerve us. Either way, it's a hassle. We called Sheridan Baylor for an emergency consult. Within an hour, she joined us via video call, her voice crackling through the speaker. "I'm investigating the plaintiff's background. So far, no record of Keith Reynolds working with you or L&M Solutions. Stay calm. They're probably fishing for a settlement." My jaw clenched. Just when I'd thought the storms had passed, a new threat emerged. "Let them fish. We won't cave." Helen glanced at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Agreed. We've come too far to let some phantom claim derail us." Still, the stress weighed on me. For the next week, we had to juggle depositions, filing responses, and meeting with Sheridan. Each conversation left a bitter taste, reminding me how easily old wounds like dealing with conspiracies and false claims could reopen. Yet it was different this time. I wasn't alone or reeling from heartbreak. I had Helen and our team at my side, and I felt more steady facing the unknown. Midway through that chaos, Helen secured a major contract a local government office needed a fast turnaround for educational brochures. It was a monumental achievement that could double our quarterly revenue. The day she finalized the deal, she practically bounded into the loft space, brandishing the signed papers. "We did it!" I let out a whoop, pulling her into a spontaneous, warm hug. The rest of our small staff clapped and cheered, the old brick walls echoing with celebration. For a moment, I forgot about the bogus lawsuit, the stress, all of it. Later that afternoon, as we stood in the half-renovated main office, I found Helen gazing at the recently installed overhead lights' new track fixtures that cast a bright, hopeful glow. "I can't believe how fast this is happening," she murmured. "Just a year ago, we were in chaos at the old job. Now look at us." I slid my hands into my pockets, nodding. "We've come a long way, and it's your milestone, too." I shot her a playful grin. "Remember when you convinced Gregory to bring me back as a consultant? That was the spark." She laughed softly. "Seems like ages ago, but I can't take all the credit. You had the tenacity to push forward." She hesitated, voice growing softer. "I'm proud of you, Adrian. After everything." The sincerity in her eyes made my chest tighten. "I'm proud of you too," I managed, wishing I could articulate the depth of my gratitude. Instead, I gently took her hand. She squeezed back, and for a fleeting second, the dusty construction site felt like the warmest place on earth. But the next morning, a text from Sheridan arrived, a reminder that the Keith Reynolds lawsuit was still a threat. We'd keep forging ahead with expansions, but we'd also prepare for a potential showdown. This time, though, the dread didn't paralyze me. I'd faced real heartbreak, real betrayal. A flimsy legal scare felt almost mundane in comparison. I stood in the new office's conference room, our unfinished logo stenciled on a wall, and inhaled the faint scent of fresh paint. Yes, challenges remained. Valerie might still attempt a last dig, or a random scammer might try to leech off our success, but I could handle it. With Helen, Marjorie, and our growing circle, we'd proven we could weather storms far more treacherous than this. Outside, the sun broke through a bank of clouds, sending a burst of light across the floor. It was a sign, I told myself. Every new door we opened might bring setbacks, but each setback also brought a chance to strengthen our resolve. The past had taught me resilience, and the present, surrounded by allies, was shaping me into someone who refused to let bitterness define his life any longer. Sunday afternoon found me strolling through a local park with Helen. Autumn leaves blanketed the pathways in gold and red, rustling under our footsteps. We'd decided we both needed a break from business and lawsuits. The air was cool enough for light jackets, and the scent of roasted nuts drifted from a nearby food cart. We paused at a small wooden bridge overlooking a pond. Ducks glided across the water, leaving quiet ripples in their wake. Helen rested her elbows on the railing, eyes on the gently shifting reflections. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if Valerie hadn't cheated? If Cedric hadn't fired you?" I inhaled the crisp air, pondering the question. "Sometimes. Maybe I'd still be at that old job, living a half-truth of a marriage. Unhappy, but not aware enough to fix it." I glanced at her. "We never would have discovered how well we worked together personally and professionally." Her lips curved in a soft smile. "Is it strange that I'm almost grateful for how things turned out?" "Grateful might be a stretch," I said with a rueful laugh, "but I see your point." I exhaled, recalling the roller coaster of revenge plots, heartbreak, and clandestine maneuvers. Revenge was consuming. It gave me purpose for a while, but the cost was high. I nearly forgot what it felt like to genuinely live without anger. Helen turned, leaning her hip against the railing so she faced me fully. "You've let go of that anger now, haven't you?" I considered her question carefully. Most of it. There's still a scar, but I'm not lying awake at night plotting how to humiliate anyone anymore. She nodded, touching my arm gently. "That scar might fade over time. You did what you felt you had to. Now, you get to choose what's next." A breeze rustled the branches overhead, dislodging a few more leaves that spiraled down like confetti. The hush between us felt laden with possibilities. I thought of how often Helen had been there coaxing me to step back from my darkest impulses, cheering me on when I needed a push. Every day I saw more than a friend or colleague in her eyes, but I'd held off from pushing it further, wary of rebounding or forcing something prematurely. "I want to look forward," I finally said, voice steady. "Build a real future. One not defined by what Valerie did or how I retaliated, and I'd like it if you were part of that." Helen's gaze flickered with warmth. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then she slipped her hand into mine. "I'd like that too." The sense of relief that swept through me was almost dizzying. We might not have declared undying love or set a ring on it, but it felt like a doorway to something genuine, something that didn't revolve around revenge or fear. That evening, we visited a small bistro near the park. Twinkling lights decorated the ceiling, creating an intimate glow. Over plates of grilled salmon and roasted vegetables, we talked about everything except business, our childhood memories, favorite books, silly anecdotes from college. I learned she once performed in a high school production of Grease, belting out tunes in a pink jacket. She discovered I used to sketch military aircraft as a teen, daydreaming of being a pilot. By dessert, tiny chocolate mousse cups, the world seemed to glisten with promise. But as we stepped outside into the brisk night, a flicker of caution stirred inside me. "Is it too soon?" I asked quietly. Helen paused, searching my expression. "For us?" I nodded, feeling the old scars twinge. "I don't want to hurt you by rushing into something when I'm only recently free of Valerie." She reached up, resting a gentle hand on my cheek. "Adrian, you've already done the hard work confronting your pain, letting yourself heal. That doesn't mean everything is magically perfect, but waiting forever out of fear isn't healthy either." Her eyes softened. "I'm not Valerie, and you're not the same man you were a year ago." Emotion swelled in my chest, gratitude mixing with a tinge of lingering apprehension. But as I looked at her, I realized I believed in her words. "All right," I said softly, threading my fingers through hers. "Let's take it step by step. Together." She smiled, and the quiet resolve in her eyes mirrored what I felt. Our revenge saga was over. The cost had been high, but I'd learned resilience. And now, it seemed, we stood on the brink of a new stage, one defined by trust, honesty, and mutual growth. As we walked down the sidewalk, the distant glow of street lamps cast overlapping circles of light. A fresh leaf fluttered past, brushing Helen's shoulder before drifting to the ground. She laughed softly, brushing it aside. I drew her closer, inhaling the crisp night air. The tension of the past months, the storms of betrayal all felt like chapters in a book we were closing. I might still see glimpses of Valerie's ghost in my quieter moments, or recall the bitterness that fueled my cunning revenge. But each day, that old anger loosened its grip, replaced by something deeper, the understanding that true strength isn't found in plotting someone's downfall. It's in learning to trust again after the fall. We reached our cars, parked side by side. Her eyes met mine in the warm glow of a nearby street lamp. Without a word, we embraced, and for the first time it felt entirely natural. No guilt, no hidden agenda, just quiet anticipation of a future we could shape on our own terms. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of L&M Solutions' newest office space, an airy second floor lined with glass partitions and sleek modern furniture. Potted palms added a splash of green, and there was even an in-house espresso bar humming away in one corner. I stood near the panoramic window, gazing down at the bustling city street below, thinking about how drastically my life had changed in just over a year. Helen approached, tablet in hand, her tone businesslike, but eyes warm. "We just signed another client, a European electronics firm that wants on-demand manuals in 5 languages. She tapped the screen, a slight grin on her lips. "Global expansions, here we come." I let out a low whistle. "That's massive." Turning from the window, I tried to contain a surge of excitement. With Gregory Clifton still championing us to corporate contacts, we can scale faster than I ever dreamed. Helen nodded, then slid the tablet away. "But it's not just about business, right? You mentioned wanting more philanthropic work after that pilot literacy project." She cast me a questioning glance. You still up for that angle? Absolutely, I said, my mind flitting to the adult literacy center we'd helped earlier. I'd like us to formalize a program to support nonprofits, maybe offer discounted printing or digital resources for schools, disabled veterans, single-parent support groups, something that channels our success back into the community. Her smile widened, reflecting the bright morning sun. Perfect. I know Marjorie's got connections to a few veteran outreach programs. We can coordinate with her. Just then, Fiona Hastings, our steadfast accountant, poked her head in. Good news, our quarterly profits allow us to fund a small philanthropic division without hurting the bottom line. But we'll need to hire someone dedicated to managing all those partnerships. Helen and I exchanged a look, a shared spark of optimism passing between us. Go ahead and budget for that position, I told Fiona. Let's make our vision a reality. After she left, Helen turned back to me. By the way, Gregory wants a meeting about forging more international ventures, possibly forging a JV with a tech partner in Asia. You good with that? I felt a quiver of exhilaration. Absolutely. Let's keep pushing boundaries. She nodded, gaze drifting to the framed photograph on the wall, an image of our entire team from the last holiday party, all grinning ear to ear. It's crazy to think how all this started with you fighting for your job and me just wanting to help. She slid her hand lightly across my shoulder, voice softening. I'm proud of us. In that moment, I realized how natural it felt discussing expansions and philanthropic efforts with Helen at my side, as though we were forging a shared future. The memory of heartbreak from Valerie's betrayal flickered, but it felt distant like a chapter from another lifetime. This was our tomorrow, one shaped by hope and steady growth without the anchors of bitterness. Helen glanced at the clock. We have a lunch with Marjorie in an hour. She hinted she's inviting someone from a local family shelter. You ready? I couldn't hide my grin. Ready as ever. The cafe chosen by Marjorie for lunch was a cozy spot with exposed brick walls and vintage pendant lights. She sat at a corner table, wheelchair positioned expertly, chatting with a bespectacled woman from the family shelter. Helen and I approached, exchanging quick greetings. Hannah was there, too, busy scrolling through something on her phone. We ordered sandwiches and iced tea, diving into conversation about how L&M Solutions might help the shelter with cost-effective printing of resources guides on parenting, job applications, and other educational materials. The woman's eyes lit up as we explained the possibility of digital downloads combined with on-demand printing at near cost. That would make a world of difference for the families we serve, she said, voice trembling with gratitude. We struggle to keep materials updated, and the cost always eats into our budget. Marjorie patted her hand. See, dear, Adrian and Helen can work miracles. Helen gave a modest shrug, her smile friendly. It's not a miracle, just the right technology meeting the right need. As we finished up, the woman excused herself to take a phone call, leaving the four of us alone at the table. Marjorie turned to Hannah, about to ask something, when a sudden commotion at the entrance drew our attention. The door swung open, and in walked a face from my past I never expected to see again. Derek, an old college acquaintance who once worked with me at my first technical writing job. My gut tightened. I recalled that he'd introduced me to Valerie at a corporate event, apparently impressed by her glamour. Over time, I suspected he might have known of her cheating, but kept quiet. Derek's gaze swept the cafe. When it landed on me, a flicker of surprise, or was it discomfort, crossed his features. He hesitated, then forced a smile, ambling toward our table. Adrian Morris, wow, it's been ages. I rose, careful to keep my tone polite. Derek, didn't expect to see you here. He chuckled nervously, flicking a glance at Marjorie and Helen. Small world. I'm in town consulting for a pharma client. Heard about your new business, impressive. He paused, searching my face. I also heard about Valerie leaving. Sorry, man. My chest tightened at the mention of her name, but I forced a steady nod. It was tough, but I've moved on. I gestured to Helen, who observed quietly, her posture calmly protective. This is Helen Jordan, my business partner. Derek cast an appraising look, then offered a nod. Nice to meet you. He lingered, fiddling with his jacket zipper. So, listen, About Valerie, if I'd known back then how it would turn out, I'd never have introduced you to. She was always a bit opportunistic. Heat flared in my cheeks. Was he trying to cleanse his conscience? Water under the bridge, I said. I've made peace with it. Marjorie coughed politely, guiding the conversation away from unwelcome territory. Adrian's thriving now, with or without old acquaintances. Perhaps you'd like to chat business details another time, Mr. Derek, he said, offering a polite half-bow to Marjorie. Actually, I was hoping to pitch some synergy. My client needs a specialized manual distribution system. I studied him, uncertain. Old bitterness threatened to surface, but I recalled my new outlook. I wasn't the man consumed by revenge anymore. If you want to explore that synergy, contact my assistant. We'll see if it's a fit. Derek shifted, likely realizing he wasn't going to get a friendly reunion. He nodded quickly. Sure. Good luck, Adrian. With that, he excused himself. Helen let out a small sigh of relief once he was gone, reaching beneath the table to give my hand a comforting squeeze. Hannah, who'd watched the exchange with interest, piped up. Friend of yours? He seemed awkward. You could say that, I muttered, swallowing the swirl of old memories. Just a reminder that the past can pop up unexpectedly. I glanced at Helen and Marjorie. Thanks for having my back. Marjorie's knowing smile spoke volumes. She recognized how easily old wounds could reopen, but also how I'd changed. Any time, she said gently. The rest of lunch passed with no further drama. As we parted ways, Hannah slipped me a quick side hug, whispering, You're way happier now than you were in those old pictures I've seen. Keep it that way. It startled me how wise she sounded, far beyond her years. On the ride back to the office, Helen cast me a sidelong glance. You okay? I exhaled, tension easing. Yes, seeing Derek just reaffirmed how far I've come. I didn't explode, didn't feel the need to confront him. I let it roll off. That's progress. Her hand rested briefly on my shoulder. Huge progress. You've grown so much since the day I marched into Cedric's office to get you rehired. A wry laugh escaped me. Felt like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Sure does, she said, her smile warm. Now let's get back to building the future. As I pulled onto the main road, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, a determined face touched by a small, hopeful grin. Echoes of the past could still rattle me, but they no longer had the power to derail me. With each unexpected encounter, I saw more clearly how the anger and heartbreak that once controlled me had loosened their grip, and in its place growth, optimism, and the steady presence of the people I trusted. A month later, the newly refurbished main hall of our downtown office teemed with laughter and applause. Rows of folding chairs lined the open space, facing a small stage we'd erected near the back. The overhead lights glowed softly on banners reading, Grand Opening of L&M Solutions Expanding Horizons. Friends, business partners, and clients gathered to toast our official expansion. I stood at the front, microphone in hand, trying to still the flutter in my stomach. Public speaking wasn't my forte, but this was a milestone worth celebrating. Helen stood nearby, wearing a crisp navy dress, beaming with pride. Clearing my throat, I addressed the crowd. A year ago, I was out of a job and out of luck. This entire endeavor began with just 2 people and one big dream. We believed in the power of on-demand services to reinvent how companies handle documentation. Tonight, we celebrate that dream becoming reality. A wave of applause rolled through the audience. Marjorie smiled from the front row, Hannah at her side, both radiating encouragement. Gregory Clifton sat next to them, leaning in to whisper something that made Marjorie chuckle quietly. Even Cedric was there at the very back, arms folded, expression uncharacteristically subdued. Possibly he'd come out of curiosity or courtesy. We'd heard rumors he was moving on to another division, stripped of real influence, but at least no longer an active threat. I handed the mic to Helen, who spoke eloquently about our philanthropic branches, praising our staff for their tireless work. Then she turned to me, eyes shining. We want to thank everyone who stood by us. This expansion is about more than making money. It's about forging a new standard, one that values integrity and service. We're proud to share this moment with all of you. Another surge of applause. As it died down, Helen handed the mic to Fiona, who recognized the behind-the-scenes contributions of our partner organizations. Finally, we cut a ceremonial ribbon across the stage with oversized scissors, eliciting cheers and camera flashes. The official unveiling was complete, but the evening held more than just business triumphs. After the main ceremony, people mingled around tall tables draped in white linens. Caterers circled with trays of sparkling cider, cheese, and fresh fruit. Helen and I navigated the crowd, accepting congratulations and exchanging small talk. My chest felt warm with gratitude and anticipation. I gently guided her toward a quieter corner by the windows where the city lights twinkled like fallen stars. She sipped cider, eyes reflecting the neon glow outside. "Quite a night, huh?" "Yeah," I breathed, feeling my heart pound. "Listen, there's something I've been wanting to say or do." Swallowing, I reached into my jacket pocket. My fingertips brushed a small velvet box. Excitement and nerves tangled in my gut. Helen's brow creased in curiosity. "Adrian?" I inhaled, setting my glass aside. "We've worked so hard to get here together. You've seen me at my worst and still believed in me. You've helped me rebuild not just a career, but my entire perspective on life." I hesitated, voice quivering with emotion. "I want us to keep building, but not just as business partners." Her lips parted, eyes flicking to the pocket where I clutched the box. She looked stunned, breath catching. I carefully withdrew the small velvet case, flipping it open to reveal a ring with a simple, elegant design, nothing too flashy, just a single diamond that sparkled under the overhead lights. My voice softened. "Helen, will you marry me?" For a split second, time felt suspended. Then tears glimmered in her eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth, nodding so vigorously that a tear escaped, sliding down her cheek. "Yes," she whispered, then found her voice. "Yes, Adrian, absolutely." A rush of relief and joy flooded me. I slipped the ring onto her finger, hands trembling from the adrenaline. Applause erupted behind us, someone must have noticed, and soon half the room was clapping, echoing the moment of triumph. Hannah squealed, racing over to throw her arms around us, while Marjorie beamed from across the floor. Even Gregory looked genuinely pleased. Helen and I stood there, caught in a swirl of well-wishers, cameras flashing again, laughter mingling with tears of pure happiness. For a moment, my mind drifted back to that day of heartbreak when I lost almost everything. If someone had told me then that a year later I'd be in a new business, engaged to a woman who truly valued me, forging philanthropic dreams, I would have called it impossible. Yet here I was, living it. As the night wound down, I caught a glimpse of Cedric slipping out, expression unreadable. Maybe he'd come just to see if my success was real, but the thought barely touched me. This was a celebration of growth, love, and redemption far beyond any petty grudges. I turned back to Helen, who was laughing with Hannah, the ring glinting under the bright lights, and my heart surged with the pure sense of a new beginning. A few weeks passed in a blissful whirlwind wedding plans peppered with expansions at L&M Solutions. The philanthropic partnerships flourished, bringing in heartfelt thank you notes from shelters and literacy groups. Hannah, upon hearing about the engagement, jokingly asked if she'd have to call me Dad. Her blush and laugh spoke volumes about how far we'd come from her initial wariness. Early one Saturday, Helen and I took a leisurely drive to a nature reserve outside the city. We strolled hand in hand through a winding trail lined with towering pines. The air smelled of moss and fresh morning dew, and sunlight filtered through the canopy in soft beams. At a scenic overlook, we paused to soak in the view, a vast lake shimmering below, framed by distant hills. I found myself recalling every obstacle that once seemed insurmountable: Valerie's deceit, Cedric's sabotage, Brandon's manipulations, the bruising divorce. Yet each challenge had shaped me, forced me to confront darkness, and ultimately led me to a life far richer than I imagined. Helen leaned against the weathered railing, her auburn hair catching the dappled light. "So," she said softly, "you've mentioned wanting a family, maybe more kids one day. Have you thought about it seriously?" My heart fluttered. "Yes. Honestly, I'd love to adopt or have one of our own if it's possible. Hannah's amazing, but if she'd be comfortable gaining a sibling, we'd see." Helen's eyes shone. "I'd be open to it. Building a family on our own terms feels right," especially given everything we've learned about loyalty and love. I enveloped her in a warm side hug, the wind ruffling our jackets. Let's see what the future brings, step by step. She nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder. For a while we simply stood there, the hush of nature washing over us. A hawk circled high overhead, its cry echoing like a symbol of freedom. No more resentment weighing me down, just the clear horizon of new possibilities. Back at the car, my phone pinged with a message from Gregory Clifton. "We have an investor from Asia interested in a joint venture. Let's discuss next week." I showed Helen, and her face lit with excitement. We had big decisions ahead, possibly forging an international presence for L&M Solutions, and the philanthropic branch could expand, too, maybe sponsor educational initiatives overseas. "You ready for that?" Helen asked, a teasing note in her voice. "Global expansions, fatherhood, marriage, kind of a lot on your plate?" I laughed, tucking my phone away. "Bring it on. If I can handle my old life blowing up, I can handle forging a new one, especially with you by my side." We drove home, the road winding under arching trees, a symphony of gratitude playing in my mind. That night, we shared dinner with Marjorie and Hannah. They'd prepared a small celebration for our engagement. Nothing grand, just a warm meal and laughter around the dining table. Marjorie lifted a glass of sparkling cider. "To Adrian and Helen, who remind us that hope and hard work can transform even the bleakest circumstances." Hannah added, "And to new families," with a shy grin that made Helen's eyes glisten. We clinked glasses, the house brimming with a contentment I once thought impossible. Later, as we settled on the couch, Helen dozed with her head on my shoulder while Hannah played a game on her phone, occasionally glancing over with a smile. Marjorie, in her wheelchair, read quietly by the lamp. The hush felt like the calm center of a once-raging storm. My thoughts drifted to the final reflection of how far I'd come since the day Cedric fired me and Valerie packed her bags. I remembered the sting of betrayal morphing into rage, the cunning revenge that momentarily satisfied but left me hollow. If I could talk to my old self, I'd say, "Hang on, pain can be a crucible that forges something better." I might not have believed it then, but I believed it now. I gazed around. This was my clear horizon, a realm of chosen family, steadfast partnership, and the freedom to shape my path. The shadows of Brandon Pierce and Cedric Vaughn were behind me, along with any lingering bitterness toward Valerie. She was a lesson, not a life sentence. In front of me stretched the future, expansions, philanthropic endeavors, perhaps another child's laughter echoing through a new home. Helen stirred, blinking sleepy eyes. "You okay?" she asked gently, noticing my faraway expression. "I'm perfect," I whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Just happy." She smiled, nestling closer, her ring catching the soft glow of the lamp. Outside, the moon rose high, illuminating the quiet street with a silver sheen. Tomorrow, more challenges might arise. Some old connections could resurface. But I was ready. No more revenge or regrets to hold me back, only the steady pulse of gratitude and the promise of new beginnings. As the night deepened, I felt my eyelids grow heavy, lulled by the comforting presence of loved ones. Tomorrow would bring its tasks, meeting with investors, forging philanthropic deals, maybe finalizing wedding details. But for now, in this contented hush, I let the last vestiges of my past heartbreak fade. There, on the edge of sleep, I experienced a profound clarity. I have no regrets. Every storm led me here, to a life of genuine love and purpose, and that, I realized, was the truest victory of all.